Today we are going to see, what if Goku trained in Mobius? So let's get started. Within the 6th universe, there was the planet Mobius. This world was very special as it hosted many legendary artifacts and creatures with just as larger-than-life stories to accompany them. The most popular of them all were the Chaos Emeralds and the blue blur Sonic the Hedgehog. Responsible for thwarting the mad scientist Dr. Eggman's countless attempts at taking over the world and a few other foes that have come and gone, he was loved by most and respected by the few that didn't. The speedster didn't accomplish these feats alone, he had many allies. Miles Tails Prower, a genius fox that was like a brother to Sonic, Amy Rose, his self-proclaimed girlfriend, the eternally adorable Cream the Rabbit. Her pet Chow Cheese and his contentious rival Shadow the Hedgehog. His most distant friend however had to be Knuckles the Echidna. On most days including today he could usually be found guarding a shrine that held the most powerful artifact in their known universe, the Master Emerald. This gargantuan diamond held even more power than all 7 Chaos Emeralds combined. And to its guardian grant the ability to even control the Chaos Emeralds. Given the duty to protect the magnificent gem by his tribe of Echidna brethren and family many years ago, he has since done so with his very life. Much of said life alone as well. This near-constant watch made it so that he never ventured off his home Angel Island unless it had something to do with Sonic and stopping Eggman yet again. Half the time because said mad doctor stole the Master Emerald. Today the little red Echidna was at his usual post, however he bore a rather sad and conflicted expression. Neither feelings were foreign to Knuckles, but on this day they were hitting him more than ever before. He stared solemnly at the shrine and the Master Emerald it withheld for probably hours, that was until a sonic boom in the distance got his attention. Knuckles looked out towards the Angel Island ruins to see 2 pillars of disturbed dirt near the floating island's edge. From out of those 2 smoky pillars came streaks of something or someone really fast, one blue and the other black, zipping through the ruins rapidly coming the Echidna's way. The Echidna let out a sigh and narrowed his eyes in annoyance. Now exactly who the 2 racing blurs were. Sure enough, within a minute both speedsters had arrived at the shrine, the blue one edging out a victory in the race by a millisecond. "Ha, told ya faker, I'm the fastest out of the 2 of us," Sonic shouted out, bragging about his win. "HMPH only by a hair, don't get too cocky Sonic," Shadow retorted lightly laughing. "So I guess my sacred homeland is just a race track to you too," Knuckles remarked in a dry, tired tone. "Oh hi Knuckles, how's it hanging?" Sonic greeted Knuckles cheerfully, completely missing his friend's displeasure. "Peachy now would it? Her of you mind not settling your grudge matches here and defiling my ancestors' work?" Knuckles questioned the 2 hedgehogs sarcastically with a very annoyed voice, a vein showing on his forehead. Shadow narrowed his eyes, giving Knuckles a nasty glare. "What harm are we doing? It's not like anyone is here living in this dump. The only thing of real value is the Master Emerald. If you had any common sense, you'd take it and have Tails store it away from harm with one of his chaos energy concealing devices or something, instead of leaving out here in the open for anyone to just waltz right over and take it. As I'm sure you've seen for yourself," Shadow criticized Knuckles' wishes in an exasperated manner, not seeing the point of them. Knuckles growled at the ultimate life form bearing his tail, growling with more veins showing on his head. "Haha, he does make a good point there, Knux." Sonic giggled, agreeing with Shadow, though he recoiled in nervous fear when Knuckles turned his furious head towards him. Shadow, why don't you start heading over to Windy Valley? We'll have another race there," Sonic told Shadow, gesturing for Shadow to leave. "Aren't you coming?" Shadow asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'll meet you there in a few minutes," Sonic replied, waving off Shadow, darting his eyes at Knuckles to give Shadow a wordless signal that he wanted to talk to the irritated Echidna. Shadow merely shrugged his shoulders, turned away from Sonic and zoomed off to his intended destination. The blue hedgehog then turned his attention to Knuckles, who had gone back to his brooding stare down with the ancient shrine. Taking a couple steps closer, Sonic then cautiously asks, "You wanna talk about it?" Knuckles tried to remain firm and unresponsive to Sonic as to not appear weak, but his will to hold his front quickly crumpled away and he sighed, turning to his side, not looking at Sonic but not the shrine anymore either. "I've had a lot on my mind the past few weeks after we got CK from the Starfall Islands," he finally revealed. "When we first met I attacked you because Eggman tricked me into believing you were an enemy trying to steal my people's most prized possession, which I believed was my duty to honor because they were noble warriors that created them to benefit the world," Knuckles lamented, then lowered his head in shame as he recalled more recent events in his mind. But then during that chaos business I learned that my people misuse the emerald and the world around them to destroy their supposed enemies, which made chaos into that monster you had to face years later," Knuckles explained further. Sonic's face turned sad but understanding, knowing what Knuckles was feeling. "And now I find out that they didn't even create the Chaos Emeralds. They were brought to this planet by some aliens. So all my ancestors really did were build some fancy architecture and use the emeralds to savagely conquer more land. What does that make me?" "Huh," Knuckles yelled now, becoming angry, his internal conflict having risen fully to the surface. The blue blur backed up in fright, taken aback by Knuckles' outburst. "I'm sorry Knuckles, I can't imagine how difficult that must be for you," Sonic comforted his friend the only way he thought he could. "Sigh, no, that's just it Sonic, I don't know what's worse, the fact that my ancestors were not the pillars of wisdom and ability I thought they were, or that you and nobody else can truly understand what that all feels like," Knuckles unveiled, calming down but now back to slumping with depression. Sonic's emerald green eyes looked down at the ground, feeling Knuckles' internal struggle while musing over how to break him out of it. "Maybe we don't, but as your pal, I can help, and I'll start by telling you a secret of Lee Fei," Sonic offered, putting on a determined, hopeful smile. "Never pictured you as a life coach Sonic, but whatever, shoot," Knuckles slightly joked with Sonic without looking at the hedgehog, still down but open to whatever Sonic had to say. "You shouldn't dwell too much on what your ancestors did, what matters is how good of a person you are. Your family's past doesn't determine your life, you can do had they told you to do your own way or decide not to do it, the choice is ultimately yours to make," Sonic explained as best he could to make his point. "I don't know about that, it feels like it does sometimes. Besides, isn't remembering the past important for the future or something?" Knuckles questioned Sonic, uncertain and skeptical of his claim. "True, the past should be recognized and learned wrong, but dwelling too much into the past can be just as bad as forgetting it. If you do that, you'll never move on, you'll be stuck in one way forever, and that's no fun, you'll just be bored and miserable. Especially when you focus on the bad stuff from the past. I mean, look at yourself, Knucklehead, it's a beautiful day, sun's shining, birds singing and a cool breeze is blowing, the day is practical. Why begging you to have a nice happy day, yet you're standing here looking at a fancy building that makes you feel nothing but anger and sadness at yourself and your family, and you taking it out on your friends. Is that how you want your whole life to be like, Knuckles?" Sonic inquired, after thoroughly explaining the many cons of clinging to the past so tightly. Knuckles turned towards his friend in slight surprise and wonder. Surprise that Sonic could sound so elegant and serious at times despite his usual teenage-like aloof attitude, and wonder that he was right. Then again, Sonic still didn't fully comprehend his feelings on the matter and probably never would, so what did he know? Still, the fastest thing alive's words did strike a chord with him, he just couldn't quite grasp or accept it. Sud. NLY, there was a loud ringing sound erupting from a brown pouch near the steps of the shrine. It was Knuckles' pouch that he stored the few possessions he had gotten during his rare ventures off Angel Island. Knuckles and Sonic ran over to it, Knuckles reaching into to grab the source of the sound, a communicator Tails gave to him to call him when they needed him. "Knuckles, do you read me?" Tails' voice called out through the communicator. "Yes, I do, Tails. Sonic is here with me." "What's up?" Knuckles asked urgently. "Oh, thank goodness Sonic's with you. Eggman just launched an army of robots into Spagonia," Tails informed the two heroes. "Spagonia?" Both the blue hedgehog and red echidna exclaimed in shock. "What's Egghead doing over there?" Sonic questioned, confused as Spagonia possess nothing of interest to the doctor aside from Professor Pickle and his knowledge of Dark Gaia, and he already tried and failed with that scheme. "Does it matter? We're on our way, Tails," Knuckles said to Tails before shutting off the device and putting it back into his pouch. "Ah yeah, this is happening, hold on to me, Knuckles. Gotta go fast," Sonic shouted excitedly, jumping up and down, pumping high MSELF up for the next major beatdown of his ungodly persistent archenemy. Knuckles simply nodded and grabbed onto Sonic's arm, and the blue blur dashed away to face the threat. A few minutes later in Spagonia, citizens of Spagonia ran away in panic and terror as the army of thousands of Eggman robots had begun wrecking their once beautiful home. About 20% of the city had already been turned to rubble and or set on fire, and they were helpless to stop it from continuing. "Ha ha ha ho ho ho. Flee, you pathetic little maggots. This city is now property of the Eggman Empire, and soon from ashes of this droll city will arise my life's most magnificent ambition. To build my dream, Eggman land, ho 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 ho." Eggman bellowed out manically in his usual exuberant, cocky manner, hovering over the area in his Eggmobile. Then abruptly a blur of blue streaked past the front row of the robot army. Again with the whole Eggman land thing. Geez Eggster, you really need some new material or something. Gee, Sonic mocked the mad scientist, revealing himself to be the assaulter with Knuckles beside him, letting go of Sonic's hand and crossing his arms together. The crowd cheered for their saviors. "Grr, you blasted hedgehog. I swear on my great-grandfather Robotnik's grave you shall be destroyed," and Eggman monologued for what felt like an eternity. During this tirade the fastest thing alive crossed his own arms, lowering his eyes and tapping foot, looking at his companion and gave him the "Can you believe this guy?" look, and then as Eggman went on and on he did every kind of body language that EXPR. Est impatience and boredom, including rolling of the eyes, playing with fingers, staring into the sky, yawning, and a plethora of others. Now prepare to face my brilliant mind's latest creations of world domination. Eggman finally put a sock in at his last words, giving his robots commands to aim their weapons at the hedgehog, and the doctor leaned in with a wicked grin to see Sonic's expected look of fear. But he did not get the pleasure of seeing that, rather Sonic had his eyes closed and snored as if he was sleeping. "Huh," Eggman gasped at Sonic's lack of fear, Knuckles chuckling at his disbelief. "Huh, so sorry Eggman loser, did you say something?" Sonic insulted Eggman, pretending to have just woken up from a nap, making the fat madman growl with anger at Sonic's insolence. "Oh right, you want me to play with you and your toys? Nah, I'm not in the mood for it today, Egg mister, but my friends look like they will," Sonic said, acting tired before grinning mischievously, pointing behind him at Knuckles. Said Red Echidna jumped into the fray, literally spinning into a ball, destroying another row of robots, then stopped at the other end, made a fist and punched another robot the shish. Ear force making it zoom through the other robots in its row, turning yet another row of badniks into a scrap heap. In the distance the last rows of the robot army were being dismantled by two newcomers. "Take this, and that, and this. None of you bucket of bolts are touching my Sonic," Amy Rose declared, furiously swinging her oversized hammer, bashing up to 10 robots at a time. For such great technology, Eggman's robots sure are vulnerable to a little EMP blast. Tails remarks, smirking as he and his cyclone fire many blasts of EMPs at the robots, instantly short-circuiting any mechanical menace they make contact with. In the middle of the army, the robots were left intact and undisturbed up till this point with their destruction. That was until a little rabbit got the metal terrors' attention. "Hi, look at us. Cream," the rabbit squealed in pure delight, with her pet Chow mimicking her motions, using her big ears to fly through the sky. This distracted the robots long enough for He ultimate life form to chaos control into the middle of the army and swing uppercut kick the 8 closest robots to him, sending each flying in all directions, exploding lots more of their kind. "Yay, we make great team, Shadow." Cream cheered, landing on the ground, raising her hand up, wanting a high five. Shadow shook his head and closed his eyes, but he had a small smile on his face. He obliged Cream's request and high-fived her back. The 5 allies of Sonic within 5 minutes had completely decimated Eggman's army. "No," the mad scientist cried out in despair, and defeat his Eggmobile THN being disabled by a strike by Sonic's spin attack. "Ha, same as ever, all bark and no bite," Sonic mocked, doing a little victory dance as his allies cornered Eggman. "Face it Eggman, you ain't gonna win as long as we and Sonic are here to stop you," Tails proclaimed confidently at the sniffling doctor. "Yeah, and now I'm gonna kick your Knuckles' threat was cut short when suddenly the sky darkened and roared with thunder. Everyone looked up to see the previously bright blue clear sky be consumed by some kind of black clouds. The clouds concentrated around the area where the sun shone, blocking it out. Before anyone could mutter a word, a beam of dark purple energy shot out from the vortex of black clouds and blew up half of Spagonia in a flash, thankfully not the half where the heroes were present. Mouths hung open, eyes horrified, with Cream quickly breaking down in tears, digesting the fact that millions of lives were just extinguished. All the heroes then rapidly turned to look at the infamous mad scientist with livid expression on all of them, especially Knuckles, Shadow and Sonic. "You've really done it this time. You're dead," Shadow screamed, enraged, stomping his way towards Eggman, who yelped in terror. "I'll hold him down," Knuckles offered, equally venomous sounding. Wait, that wasn't me, I swear." Eggman pleaded his innocence. "Can it?" Knuckles yelled, grabbing Eggman by his mouth. Then grabbed both of the doctor's arms and held them painfully to his back as Shadow neared him, gathering chaos energy into his hands. "Goodbye, Doctor," Shadow shouted about put Eggman down forever with his chaos slice. "Yoo-hoo, up here," a voice called out from above. Everyone looked up to their bewilderment to see a man wearing a black and gray GI with a red knot, IKY wild hair and an inhumanly wide-fanged grin, staring menacingly down at them. "Hello there, little fellas, hee 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 ha ha ha. The man whispered creepily to the group, then letting out an evil laugh. Had gradually escalated into full-on hysterics, the insanity practically oozing from his being. What was this new threat to Mobius Earth? The mysterious warrior clad in black GI hovered over the heroes. And Eggman them staring at him with mixtures of confusion, shock and anger. Meanwhile the remaining citizens of Spagonia fled to elsewhere. Ah, you lot might just be the cutest mortals I've come across so far. Tell you what, just stand still right there and I'll make your end nice and swift. The madman declared, for a moment only carrying only playful aggression before immediately revealing it to be deadly, extending his hand out and black-colored energy started concentrating within his palm. Sonic's face hardens into one of seriousness. The blue blur takes up a starting position and then zooms forwards past his friends towards some wrecked buildings below where the man was floating. Huh, the maniac exclaimed, flabbergasted by the hedgehog's tremendous speed. This left him inattentive. As Sonic reached one of the tall buildings, jumped up onto a broken wall, then zigzagged his way upwards with the stairs and windows of the building, finally reaching a flagpole at the very top of it. Spinning on it for a second before letting go, launching himself at supersonic speeds right at the man. With that, Sonic delivered a hard kick to the man's side, disrupting his energy attack and sending him flying. Ah, grr, the lunatic screamed and then growled enraged after flying away by a few feet and stopping himself still in the air. Sorry, but standing still ain't never been one of my strong points, especially when my friends are in danger, Sonic fake apologized in a stern manner after landing on top of another building. Back with the others, all of Sonic's team was staring at their friend and the mass murderer's standoff. This distraction allowed for Dr. Eggman to skid and slither away from his captors over to his barely functioning Eggmobile, all while having his eyes on the confrontation too. How dare you hurt me? Prepare to face the wrath of the gods. The man screams in a fury, launching himself towards the hedgehog, readying a powerful punch. He reached Sonic and brought down his fist and it hit the spot, but the blue blur was gone. Wah, how did he? The man questioned, bewildered by Sonic's evasion of his direct attack. He looked around in a crazed frenzy in all directions, not seeing his prey anywhere until said prey made itself known, racing over his shoulders and skidding to a halt, a smirk plastered on his face, scratching under his nose. Hey, get back here, lunatic yelled indignantly, repeating his previous attack, and just like before it failed miserably, with the only difference being Sonic's pose, still smirking but now had his body curved to appear under, with both his hands pointing at the man parallel to each other. The fight went on like this for a few seconds, though to the murder it definitely felt like an eternity as he kept trying to punch, kick or grab the speedster, and each time it zipping away unscathed, striking a different pose each time, including a chill relaxed one, standing with one leg bending to his back slightly and waving his finger, and him standing with his hands on the ground and his feet up into the air. You're too slow. The cocky hedgehog mocked his attacker, chuckling to himself. Hey, quit it. You're not supposed to be faster than me. It's not fair. It's not fair. The man-child pouted and whined disturbingly yet kinda hilariously, like a little kid, even stomping his feet and flaying his arms around. Sonic as well, as his onlooking allies were completely befuddled and taken aback by their enemy's childish temper tantrum, most of them being made very uncomfortable by it. Sonic himself, on the other, found it rather funny. Ha 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 ha, ah, is the big boy throwing a hissy fit? Ha ha ha, Sonic insulted the man-child, laughing his quills off. The delinquent man gritted his teeth, snarling and growling at the hedgehog's insults, his body becoming enveloped in an aura of black energy. His anger seemed to trigger a minor bodily metamorphosis as his eyes changed color from obsidian black to a ghostly gray, his 80 spiky messy hair becoming even more so, and most strikingly 2 fangs grew into his mouth. Okay, that's different, Sonic mused nervously upon witnessing the man-child's change. This is divine justice. Now die. The madman screamed in a deep roar as some of his black ki concentrated into one of his hands, began glowing a dark purple and took on a blade-like shape. Ah! The man yelled, lunging himself at the blue hedgehog, swinging his energy blade at it, and this time his attack grazed his prey's arm. Gah! Whoa! Sonic exclaimed in slight pain and then panic as the blade, despite his SP, managed to scratch his arm and then just barely avoided another swing aimed at his head. Sonic! Tails! Knuckles and Amy shouted in unison, in both shock and concern that the mysterious menace's assault was actually making contact. Shadow stood silent but clearly awestruck as well, all while a very frightened Cream and Cheese hid behind him. The lunatic kept swinging and slashing at Sonic, the latter just about dodging the first couple, but as the former put in more and more power and ferocity into his attacks, more and more of them were making contact and dealing increasing amounts of damage. Ah, oof, ow, da. Sonic cried out in agony with each blow, his body becoming crisscrossed with many cuts slicing his skin open and bleeding profusely. The fastest thing alive had been outpaced. Finally the man ceased his assault and smiled evilly at his work. Ha 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 ha, that's what you insects get for your blasphemy. All mortals who face me are fated to perish. The madman stated matter-of-factly in an aggressive manner. Sonic wanted to counter-strike but his entire being hurt too much for him to think of one, let alone actually attempt one. Laughing manically, the lunatic raised his GY blade over his head, preparing a finishing strike. Just as he started bringing his blade of death downwards, he suddenly felt his body freeze in place, and it was also enveloped in a green energy sphere. Wah, what's going? The murder's inquiry was interrupted when Shadow appeared right in front of him. Chaos control, the black and red hedgehog called out, delivering a roundhouse kick to the man's face, sending him plummeting to the ground below, creating a small crater and a dust plume. You alright? Shadow asked, mostly monotone but with a hint of concern in his voice as he landed next to his companion. Yeah, oh man, that guy got a second wind or something. I owe ya one, Shadow, Sonic thanked his ally. You owe me several, but who's counting? Shadow retorted with his commonly dry sense of humor. Meanwhile, the mysterious man was rising from the debris, shooting glares at the two hedgehog rivals above. He was just starting to conjure up another energy attack when a hammer came down upon his head, disorienting him. That was for hurting Sonic. And this is for killing all those people, Amy said furiously, having struck the killer with her infamous giant hammer and did so again even harder. You damn bitch, the killer replied angrily with his face in the dirt. Knuckles then glided onto the scene, roughly landing on the man's back and locking his arms into a full Nelson. Damn yourself, you monster. Tails now, Knuckles shouted urgently to his fox friend. The genius fox exited out of his cyclone and took out his Miles Electric, turned some kind of knob and then fired a ball of electrical yellow energy. Once it made contact with the murderer's hands, it instantly morphed into a handcuff-like shape around his hands, effectively trapping them. Wah, you little hey, why can't I get out of these? The lunatic shrieked in disbelief at his entrapment. Good luck trying to get out of those. I recently upgraded my Miles Electric. You aren't hurting anyone anymore, Tails declared proudly, blowing away the little bit of smoke coming from his tech with a triumphant grin on his face. Sonic, with some help from Shadow, railed their way down from the building they were on to the group on the ground. Mr. Sonic, are you okay? Cream asked worryingly, running up to the blue hedgehog. Don't worry, Cream, I'm still breathing, Sonic reassured Cream, rubbing her head gently, which put a relieved smile on her face. Sonic limped closer to the captured villain, who was jumping and yanking around trying to get his hands free, letting out growls and grunts. Start talking. Why did you blow up half the city? Who are you? Knuckles interrogated the deadly stranger standing a couple feet away. No fair. You cheated. I'm supposed to win. Let me out of this thing. The manchild whined pitifully, still unable to free himself. This second occurrence of rather juvenile behavior from their new foe got most of the heroes to look at each other, perplexed and weirdly worried about their new enemy. Guys, this probably sounds crazy, but I don't think this guy is truly evil, Tails hesitantly proposed to his teammates. Yeah, I'm with you there, buddy, he kinda sounds like just a big kid, Sonic agreed with his yellow fox best friend. Should we maybe talk to him a little more gently? Maybe he'll tell us why he's doing this, Amy proposed, pondering at the possibility of playing good cop to get some info. I don't know about that, Amy, this guy seemed pretty lost in the head, Knuckles pointed out, expressing his skepticism. It doesn't matter if he has the mentality of an adult or a child. He's too dangerous to be kept alive. We have to finish this now, Shadow argued back, determined to fulfill his promise to Maria and keep humanity safe and killing the troubled Yout. Was the best and quickest way of accomplishing that goal to him. But what if he's not a bad person? Maybe he used to be a really nice person and he's just be tricked or forced to be bad, and maybe we just need to help him to stop him from doing more bad things. Cream cutely countered Shadow's ultimatum. Shadow looked back and forth between Cream and the lunatic, uncertain. He still believed the man was too dangerous, but at the same time he didn't want to upset the little rabbit. She reminded him of Maria, and the last thing he wanted was for her to be mad at him, so against his better instinct. He folded his arms and closed his eyes, wordlessly accepting Tails' gentle probing strategy. By this point the madman had started to tire from his attempts to break himself free, turning his head away from the group's view as he continued heavy breathing and growling. The crew tiptoed a little closer to their captive, Tails specifically getting to just beside him. Be careful, bro, the blue blur warned his friend. Tails nodded at Sonic's worry and cleared his throat. Why do you wanna destroy us? Did someone tell you that we were bad? Tails calmly asked in a worried tone as to convey his intentions of helping. The man however did not seem to respond to the genius fox, as he still faced away from the crew still groaning and growling, though the growling had noticeably become more prominent. If it's because someone's forcing you to, please tell us who it is and we'll free you from him or her. You can trust us, Tails encouraged, tenderly reaching out his hand to touch the man's back. Suddenly the madman flipped over to look at Tails and the others with murderous rage, making Tails retract his hand and back 1 foot away in fright. Shadow scowled at this and pulled a hand to his back, ready to pounce with a counterattack should the mysterious youth try anything. I don't need to tell you mortals anything. You rodents won't stop me or my master from exterminating all of you and ushering in a new era of justice and peace in the cosmos. The lunatic declared defiantly. Master? Who is your master? Amy questioned. The killer just glared daggers at her, his growls becoming deeper and more intense, making the pink hedgehog sweat beads from fear. Why does he think the two of you are gods, or that killing all of us is justice? Cause that's a pretty sick idea of justice, Knuckles asked. A bit more aggressively, getting really ticked off at the attacker's lack of cooperation and his previous atrocities. It's all worth it to me to get my revenge, the man answered quietly with a hiss to his voice. This piece of information caught the Sonic heroes' interest. They finally had a concrete lead. Revenge? For what? Who? Sonic questioned somewhat fast, eager to keep digging the metaphorical well of info. Goku, the man revealed with venomous intensity. And what exactly did this, Goku, do for you to warrant all this destruction? Knuckles pestered the man further. He's responds. Ibel, my home, my family, they're all Giga. The madman, seething with anger, tried to explain, but then abruptly something seemed to snap inside of him and he let out a pained shriek, shocking the heroes. What is it? What's wrong? Tails and Amy questioned frantically, seconds apart from each other, them and the rest seeing the manchild in pain. No, stop it. Stay in control. The man continued, writhing in agony seemingly from some force surging within him. He grew 2 additional fangs on the bottom row of his teeth. His skin went from a tan color to a sickly gray, and when he opened his eyes they had changed yet again, now appearing like soulless black canvases with white glowing centers in the middle. His screams also became more echoing and creepier, sounding as if there was Anyo their voice talking through the same mouth. All of Mobius's legendary heroes were shocked and disturbed by this strange, unsettling change. They've all seen freaky things before, but this was on several different levels. Once the metamorphosis was complete, the now demonic-looking man let out animalistic shrieks that pierced the ears of everyone around. He resumed his struggle with the energy handcuff. And this time they bent and sparkled under strain, and after a minute of violent yanks, pulls and purple energy gathering around his hands, he freed himself, the handcuffs disintegrating into nothingness. Sonic and his friends rapidly got back into battle stances, Tails raising his Miles Electric and Amy her hammer nervously prepare themselves. After darting around aimlessly for a few seconds like a clueless animal, the demon locked eyes with the heroes and a wide vicious grin appears on his face. Staring each other down, the two opposing forces wait or one or the other to make a move. Kai, the madman exclaimed, and then his entire being vanished before the heroes' eyes. Where did he go? Cream asks fearfully, Cheese floating closer to her, both increasingly apprehensive. Was that chaos control? Knuckles asked, exasperated, as the madman's disappearing act looked like chaos control, but the man said different words so no one was sure. He behind you, the man's voice was heard. Behind Cream and Cheese, him looking down at the pair, who stiffened in terror. Shadow and the others except Cream and Cheese turned around upon hearing the voice. The killer readies a hand, cupping his fingers together and pulls his hand back, intending to cut the little rabbit's head off. Shadow, seeing this, jumps forward and pushes Cream and Cheese just out of harm's way right as the maniac swung. Instead of being annoyed by this, the man guy goes full on insane, laughing like a demon. Amy, angered by Cream and Shadow near death, she raised her hammer and charged at the laughing lunatic. You'll pay for that. She cried out in a fury, putting all her might into one mighty strike. It hit her target, the crazed psycho's head, and it didn't faze him, to her and the remaining conscious her. Oz's disbelief, the murderer just stared back at her and laughed, all while the hammer cracked and shattered into pieces like it had hit the Master Emerald itself. No way, Amy cried out in futile denial. Yes way, the man retorted, appearing right in front of the pink hedgehog and delivering an uppercut punch to her jaw, sending her rocketing upwards, crashing into one of the many wrecked buildings surrounding them. Amy, no, Sonic yelled out to his girlfriend, hoping she was all right. Tails and Knuckles rushed in on opposite sides attempting to intersect and double team against their monstrous opponent. This proved to be a failure as Knuckles reached the monster first, but said monster with lightning-fast reflexes caught both of his feet and then used his body to knock Tails with the echidna's head to the ground. Too dazed to resist, Knuckles was tossed and turned around viciously as the man's toy that he used to bash Tails around like a golf ball, finally ending with Knuckles being thrown right at Tails, sending the two crashing through 3 buildings and creating a small trench where their bodies crashed through. "Bad idea, Buster," Sonic furiously yelled out, showing a rare amount of anger. The fastest thing alive tried to go up to Mach speed, but his injuries from the bottle's start made his legs hurt too much to reach anywhere close to that speed. The monstrous manchild saw this, and with evil glee forged another energy blade. When the blue hedgehog was only halfway towards him, he teleported again and reappeared right in front of him, causing Sonic to bump into him like a brick wall. Before Sonic could fall completely to the floor, the maniac with incredible speed and precision sliced and diced his blade through the hedgehog yet again. The streaks of black energy crisscrossing and going through his body, and when the lunatic at last stopped, the energy streaks combusted into a powerful explosion, leaving the blue blur battered, bruised and broken unconscious. Within less than a minute the 4 veteran fighters were down for the count, and the crazed man stood hovered in the middle of it all, laughing with sadistic satisfaction and pleasure like a devil from hell. Only THR beings remained in the devastated city: Shadow, Cream and Cheese. The trio looked on in horror and, in the case of the ultimate life form, rage at the sight of their fallen comrades. Cream and Cheese looked with teary eyes at their once unlikely ally. "What are we gonna do, Shadow?" Cream meekly asked Shadow, feeling hopeless. The ultimate life form looked down at his hands and glanced at the inhibitor rings on his wrist and knew what he had to do. "I have one last shot of defeating him. Go," Shadow told the adorable rabbit without even looking at her, which stunned her. "But Cream tried to argue against abandoning Shadow, but she was cut off by Shadow. "Go, right now," Shadow screamed at the top of his lungs at Cream and Cheese. The black hedgehog's outburst borderline terrified Cream, but in spite of its harsh tone, she could tell it was his way of telling her to get out of harm's way and that it was the only chance they had of besting their foe from the stars. Nodding in sad understanding, Cream grabbed Cheese and took flight, flying faster than she ever had before, just out of sight. The madman, having overheard Shadow's scream too, saw her take off and laughed dismissively at her retreat. "I guess some of you still don't get that I'm inescapable. No matter, you'll learn that soon enough. Ha ha ha." The man laughed cruelly as he started charging a black beam of ki aimed in the direction Cream had flown away to. Shadow took a deep breath and slid his inhibitor rings off his wrists, letting them fall unceremoniously to the ground. Immediately after this, Shadow's expression became angry and concentrated. A sudden fiery aura of red energy burst from his body and his pupils whited out. "Huh," the lunatic exclaimed in surprise at this development. Shadow's aura rapidly became bigger, more erratic, and intense red lightning starting to spark around him. Still building up power, Shadow shouted out, "Chaos!" Then he all with his aura disappeared for a second before reappearing in front of the manchild, grabbing his throat, then shouting, "Blast!" The whole area erupted in a massive red explosion that pretty much vaporized the remaining half of the thankfully now mostly empty city. The ultimate life form had performed his ultimate attack. When the energy dissipated, all that was left was a charred landscape, some equally burned building remains, and the unconscious bodies of the Sonic heroes and the mysterious youth who had finally been neutralized. In the epicenter of the blast zone, Shadow stood weakly, his energy reserves nearly depleted but still alive. With some difficulty due to his aching body, Shadow reattached his inhibitor rings and then stared back at the vanquished villain. "All right then, now maybe we'll get some real info on you," Shadow said resolutely. "You mean I'll get some real info?" Eggman's voice abruptly bellowed out in the air. Shadow looked up just in time to see Eggman in his egg mobile fly right over him and activate a man-sized robotic arm that grabbed the mysterious youth. "Sage, I'm returning to base with a very promising specimen. Prepare one of the labs," Eggman ordered excitedly to his computer program surrogate daughter Sage. "Well done, father. I'll have it ready for you shortly," Sage replied affirmatively on the other end of the communication. Eggman shut off the radio, carrying the lunatic off to undoubtedly one of his many secret laboratories. "Damn it," Shadow cursed underneath his breath. Under normal circumstances he'd head off Eggman before he even got his prize, but he was too weak and injured to do much of anything, partially collapsing to his knees. Meanwhile, deep inside Knuckles' subconscious, he found himself floating in a black void, confused and unable to find a way out. "Hello, anyone here?" Knuckles' subcons Sia's self called out into the seemingly endless space of blackness. Suddenly there was a bright white light blinding the red echidna. When it dimmed enough to not burn his eyes, he saw a familiar figure, Tikal. Tikal. Knuckles gasped in surprise and shock at the return of one of his ancestors. He hadn't seen her since the fight with Perfect Chaos in Station Square. She was staring at him with a blank stare for what felt like 5 minutes before she spoke. The enemy you face now is not of this dimension, and it is also not without reason. It is a monster, but one whom you share a connection with, and is the work of 2 devils. One such devil is a master of deception and will appear to you soon. Do not fall for his lies or disaster will strike the world and more, she said in a mostly deadpan way, but it carried a hint or worry and sadness. Connection. What connection could I possibly share with that freak? Who even is he? And who is the deceiver? Knuckles inquired, bewildered as to how he crazed psycho and himself connected in any possible way, his identity and who or what would deceive them in the near future. As per usual, her premonitions, this one didn't fill in all the details. ND Tikal faded away, and momentarily later Knuckles weakly opened his eyes to find himself being carried by his rival and jewelry thief Rouge the Bat. Great, now in addition to being confused, he was in her company now. Oh, how he wished he stayed home today. The heroes had taken refuge in Cream and her mother Vanilla's cottage in Seaside Hill. They had been flown there by their close allies Rouge, Shadow and the Chaotix detective crew. Shadow, with some shakiness in his arms, just barely managed to put his inhibitor rings back onto his wrists before practically plopping onto a couch out of exhaustion and his own injuries from the battle next to his much more battered friends. My, you boys sure got banged up dealing with that freak today, Rouge remarked with amazement, with a little bit of snidely teasing mixed into her voice. Yeah, half of Spagonia was turned into a smoking crater. You guys are lucky to be alive, Vector the crocodile added, expressing his relief over his friend's safety. Heh, tell me about it, ow. Sonic joked half-heartedly right as Amy, Charmy the bee and Vanilla lifted up both of his legs and one of his arms respectively to tend to the numerous deep cuts he sustained. We would have had the freak our custody had Dr. Eggman not come along and snatched him away. Grr, damn it, I shouldn't have used so much energy with that blast. Maybe then I wouldn't have been as weakened. Shadow cursed himself harshly, making a fist to his face. Don't put yourself down, Shadow, you did what you had to do to stop him, Tails said reassuringly, trying to lift the ultimate life form out of his funk. Do we have any idea where Eggman went with this crazed individual? Espio the chameleon questioned the group inquisitively. Who knows, that egg maniac has. I don't know how many bases and secret labs all across the world. Since we were unconscious, we don't even know what general direction he went, Amy answered despondently, looking down onto the floor. Hey, cheer up, Amy. We'll find OL Egghead and that kid, kick said Egghead's butt, and figure out what the kid's deal is. Ow, Sonic declared confidently to encourage and reinvigorate Amy's mood, shooting his arm up in excitement only for its soreness and deep skin slash holes to make him wince in pain. Amy looked to Sonic and smiled weakly back at him. Don't imagine you have any ideas, Nucky, Rouge Inku. Iris in a mocking tone, turning around to look at Knuckles. The red echidna had been staring out a window on the other side of the room since he regained consciousness, not uttering a word. The vision Tikal had gotten to him, and he pondered what it meant. Hello, Rouge called out to Knuckles again, confused by his lack of response. He's usually her favorite person to rile up. Again he didn't answer. Okay, what's up with him? Rouge questioned, turning around again to look back at Sonic and the rest of his friends in a weirded out manner. Everyone in the room looked to Knuckles to see him in his contemplative state. A state they weren't used to seeing from the echidna, making them all perplexed and worried. Sonic's eyes lowered in sadness as he remembered the depression his second oldest friend had been experiencing before the current crisis they were facing started. He was feeling down about some stuff when me and Shadow raced on Angel Island earlier before the attack happened, Sonic explained. About what? Tails inquired curiously. Let me guess, because he's away from the Master Emerald and it's very vulnerable without him, as if it hasn't been stolen at least twice. In recent memory under his watch, Shadow said sarcastically, using his index fingers on both of his hands to illustrate his undermining of Knuckles' beliefs and job. Hey, knock it off, Shadow. Sonic old off his rival in defense of Knuckles' feelings, annoyed at the Black Hedgehog's lack of understanding. We're dealing with a potentially world-ending situation and he's worrying about some dumb guard job that he's not even good at. Shadow rebutted, equally furious. It's more complicated than that, Shadow. That job was given to him by his family. Family that he hasn't seen in years and has earned over all these years that they weren't the noble heroes thought they were. That's a lot to take in for anybody, let alone Knuckles. So of course he's gonna be a little distracted and out of his loop. Sonic further defended his emotional compromised friend, standing up and stomping up to a couple feet from Shadow, ignoring his lingering pain. The others except Knuckles either stepped back or shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A little intimidated by Sonic's uncommonly aggressive demeanor and the storm that was brewing between him and the ultimate life form. Oh yes, because him guarding the emerald is such a crucial job. Too bad there ain't a way for him to quit and focus on other shit going on while still making sure it's safe. Oh wait a second, yes there is. Have Tails store it in one of his chaos energy cloaking storage devices in his lab and be done with it. Shadow argued back with a mocking tone before finishing in an enraged one. To be fair, I don't have one big anu. GH to hold the Master Emerald. Tails chimed in sheepishly to try and support Sonic and Knuckles' point of view. Shadow's eyes dropped, almost closing, as he turned to stare at the two-tailed fox and, "You serious?" kind of expression. "How long would it take you to make one?" Shadow asked Tails in a deadpan tone. Tails' face faltered and slumped down, realizing how redundant his statement was. "Howdy. Oh, you know it'd be any safer that way than the way it is now," Sonic countered. "Cause then its energy wouldn't be able to be tracked. Also, how many times has Eggman been to Tails' lab compared to Angel Island? You transfer that oversized gem discreetly enough and the doctor would probably never know." Shadow retorted knowingly. "Sigh, it's not just the Emerald, Shadow, his whole past is getting to him, his family. Their actions and everything in between, it's overwhelming him. You of all people should understand what that feels like," Sonic explained, further pointing a finger at the black hedgehog, recalling Shadow's own family's past. Shadow glared daggers at Sonic, at first thinking that the blue blur and cut too deep for his liking, but as his mind played the memories of old, he realized he had a point, and his eyes darted to the floor in thought. As that was happening, Knuckles' mind had also been somewhere else. Only it wasn't a memory. The vision of Tikal and her warning kept rewinding in his head over and over again, wondering what it could possibly entail. What could it mean? Is the deceiver someone I know, or is it someone new? Why would they want to deceive me? And how does he or she make that freak not the main threat? Who even is that freak? Knuckles screamed furiously in his mind. The red echidna's vision briefly cleared of the Tikal vision so he could look out window to try and calm himself before he exploded. Seconds later, however, a sphere of red energy appeared right outside the window. "Huh," Knuckles exclaimed in surprise. He had witnessed this phenomenon before. When chaos broke out of the Master Emerald, the red energy sphere was Tikal's spirit manifested into the world. The sphere slowly floated closer and closer to Knuckles at a snail's pace. Before it suddenly zipped, phasing through the window and flashing in Knuckles' eyes, blinding him. I did not miss a wah. Knuckles' reaction was cut short when he realized he was not in Cream's house anymore. In fact, the red echidna wasn't even in Seaside Hill anymore, or anywhere he had ever been to before. The sky was a familiar blue with sun and the occasional cloud, but the buildings were completely unfamiliar to him. Half of them had a strange dome-like design. Knuckles himself found that he was standing on the balcony of the by far largest of the dome-like buildings. It was in yellow-colored, and near the top of the dome in blue the words, "Capsule Corp," were written. "Never heard of that name before. What is this place?" Knuckles wondered, slowly walking around to explore and find answers. Meanwhile, back on Mobius, somewhere in a dark laboratory, the mysterious youth lied unconscious on a metal operating table in a mostly gray laboratory room. His limbs were entrapped, in shackles made out of some kind of green energy. Leering over the young man with a malicious grin complemented by glistening blue goggles, Dr. Eggman stood over his newest discovery in anticipation. Hovering next to him, surrounded by an pixelated aura alternating between deep red and light blue coloring, was a little girl with pale white skin, snow-white hair, a black dress and eyes that changed into the same colors with her aura. Sage, Eggman's computer AI projection, and his daughter figure. Oh ho ho ho, this is magnificent. Once I have full control over this marvelously powerful young lad, I will finally conquer the world. Ha 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 ha, Dr. Eggman plotted, bellowing out in his signature laugh, throwing his arms into the air in excitement. Indeed, father, the energy readings were astounding. Though I personally am more intrigued by this strange man's origin, Sage agreed while stating her interest. As am I, Sage. That's why I'm giving you the task of getting more info about this unique specimen. His power and how I can harness it for our purposes, Eggman instructed, assigning his daughter her job. Right away, father, Sage bowed her head obediently. That's my girl, Eggman cooed AF. Affectionately rubbing his daughter's pixel hair. I'll check back in for your results in a couple hours. I gonna go fix the AC unit. Psycubot broke it after he started acting like a cowboy again and shot it. Now it's sweltering in here. Eggman complained, marching out of the room while taking a rag and wiping the sweat off his head. Sage giggled at the mention of her brother's antics. A whimpering sound perked her digital ears. She turned around to see that the whimpering was coming from the man. His eyes were furrowed down, his face was glistening with sweat, teeth gritted and his hands air shaking and clenching onto the sides of the table, with enough force that it was denting slightly. Subject appears to be in some form of distress. I will need to administer a sedative to ensure that it won't Sage's deduction was cut short when something really strange started happening to the man. With his head having turned in her direction, his previously tan-colored skin suddenly turned a sickly gray. His still gritted teeth now had 4 fangs with the rest of his human teeth, and one of his eyes had opened and it was constantly changing, starting out black with white irises then they turned gray and the white of the irises literally cracked and faded into black, then turned whiter, then blacker again. It kept going back and forth. Eventually the open eye shut abruptly, only for then his head to violently turn onto the other side and the other eye to shoot open and do the same thing the other did before. The youth's whimperings grew into groans and moans with the occasional painful and fearful sounding yelps. His arms and legs began jerking, trying to move, but the energy shackles kept him in place. What is this? Sage questioned to herself, quietly, gaining a sorrowful expression on her face. The youth looked to suffering from either a nightmare and or some involuntary bodily metamorphosis, but she could not see a logical cause for any of it. Nevertheless, she felt terrible for the young man, her eyes watering as she listened to his screams and screeches. She leaned forward toward him and grabbed one of his hands. Her contact with the man seemed to do something as his screams ceased and his limbs stopped jerking around. I'm here, you're okay, steady and calm down, Sage comforted her subject, hoping to end his episode. This seemed to work as the youth let out a deep, relaxed breath. His skin returning to its previous tan coloring, his fangs retracting and both his eyes staying shut and no longer furrowed. Sage let go of the youth's hand, breathing her own sigh of relief, gaining a small smile. It disappeared. She stared at the young man and thought back to his rampage in Spagonia earlier. Who are you, and why are you in pain? Sage questioned with a sad curiosity. Suddenly a red light illuminated the room. Sage looked up from the youth to see the same red energy sphere Knuckles was seeing at Cream's house. How did that get in? Ge exclaimed in surprise as the sphere rocketed towards her and smacked right into her face, blinding her with a bright light. Back in the Mystery City with Knuckles. Knuckles continued to wander about the balcony of the Yellow Dome building until he stumbled upon a group of people. Most of them were clearly humans as far as Knuckles could tell, the only exceptions being a humanoid dog wearing a La ninja outfit and what looked like a blue goblin-type kid. They all had many varying distinct appearances uncommonly seen in most people from what Knuckles recalled, however one stood out amongst them all. On the opposite side from where Knuckles was standing, he saw a boy, looking to be of about 12 or 13 years old, and he looked exactly like the mass murderer except obviously shorter in stature, and instead of his black GI with gray undershirt and red sash, his GI was orange, undershirt was blue and the sash also blue. It's him, Knuckles muttered in surprise and slight shock, now fully realizing where he was. Tikal had sent him to learn the past of the mysterious youth, much like how she did with Chaos. As he said that, however, he realized that his muttering was virtually copied and in sync with another female-sounding voice speaking the same words. The red echidna turned around and to his further surprise sees Sage floating a few feet away from him, staring back at him equally surprised. You, what are you doing here? Knuckles interrogated the daughter of his greatest enemy aggressively. I don't know. I was examining him in my father's lab when suddenly this red SP here appeared and the next second I was here. Sage explained, exasperated, still getting over her recent dealing with the episode with the youth and herself suddenly transported to a time and place she didn't know. Wait, Tikal sent you here too? Knuckles asked, surprised now a little more calmly. Both looked back at the group of people and the kid version of the killer. Only then did they notice a weird green sphere that was projecting what looked like static like a TV. We lost. The child version of the youth stuttered out of his mouth in an anxious tone. Lost? Lost what? Knuckles questioned out loud. Suddenly the sunny blue skies roared with thunder and instantly shifted into what looked like a starless night sky. What's going on? The child cried out in confusion and terror. The saint of the group of people plus Sage and Knuckles themselves were all panicking silently upon the sudden darkening of the skies, made worse by an intense wind that started blowing in every direction. Saw. Ge looked out the balcony and to her horror he saw all the buildings, houses and roads are start to crack and fall apart into a growing void. This all happened while the terrified citizens of City W were consumed by thin white auras before vanishing into nothingness. Ah, the world, it's like it's being deleted. Sage exclaimed in utter disbelief and terror at the apocalyptic scene unfolding before her pixelated eyes. Knuckles briefly turned to look out the balcony, also seeing the devastation occurring, his eyes widening with horror. Ah, a black-haired woman wearing a mostly yellow dress skirt, etched in pain as the same white aura of death encased her being. Mom, are you okay? The child asked his apparent mother, walking to her. He wouldn't reach her in time as she disappeared in a blink of an eye. Mom, the child screamed in despair and agony. His mother was gone. One by one the group of people disappeared into the void, each either screaming in denial, hugging their loved ones, or simple why crying as they each met the same fate as the boy's mom, the city, and presumably the entire world. Within less than 30 seconds only one person was left with the child, and it was another young boy who appeared around the same age with purple hair, who had just lost what looked to be his girlfriend, and all that remained of the world was the balcony they stood on. Our dads lost, they actually lost. The purple-haired teen screeched out in disbelief. What the hell did their dads lose that's causing all this? Knuckles screamed himself in angry disbelief, wanting to stop whatever was happening despite him knowing it was the past. Regardless of whether he knew the kid or anyone in this world, he hated that they were all dying, as did Sage, who was tearing up in sadness and grief of all the death. The purple-haired teen was encased in the white aura, turning to look to the spiky-haired child in horror. Goten, he practically whispered weakly in a defeated tone, beginning to cry. Trunks. No, no, no. The child cried out, praying that his apparent friend wouldn't leave him too. But he did, and the child left all alone as far as he knew, the balcony cracking beneath his feet, nearly gone. No, Gohan, Trunks, Vital, Pan, come back, please. The child wailed, tears flowing out of his eyes like rivers. Knuckles stood looking at the child, feeling his pain and loss, and though his face remained in a mostly stunned state, a couple tears fell from his own eyes. Despite what the child would go on to do, he clearly didn't deserve this. No child did. Sage couldn't take it anymore and tried to grab the child and rescue him, but to her befuddlement and anguish she found she was unable to, her body simply phasing through the child and the child not even registering her presence, let alone her efforts to save him. Abruptly another flash of light erupted in Knuckles and Sage's eyes. Back at Cream's cottage. Ah! Knuckles screamed from where he was standing in the room before, his soul now being back in the present, knocking himself down to the floor, breathing heavily. What's wrong? Knuckles, what happened? Tails, Sonic and Amy asked respectfully, while the rest of the crew just gasped and/or widened their eyes in surprise of Knuckles' scream. Sonic, along with Espio, Vector and Amy, ran over to the red echidna and helping him up. It was him, I saw that guy as a kid, Knuckles tuttered out, still trying to get over the overwhelming emotions he had just felt while experiencing the vision. What? How did you see something like that? Charmy B asked in total confusion of Knuckles' claim. Was it because of Tikal? The four of us have experienced this sorta thing before, Tails inquired, gesturing to himself, Knuckles, Amy and Sonic remembering their visions of chaos. Yes. And, Knuckles trailed off as his head drooped down to look at the floor and tears start trickling down his eyes, unable to hold in his immense sadness and grief over the vision of a world vanishing. Others crowded around him in worry and confusion, wondering what it is Knuckles saw when there was a knock on the door. Cream walked over to the door, opening it. Standing at the entrance of the house, he was a green-skinned man with a purple outfit and pointy ears, one of which donned an orange earring. Can I help you, sir? The little rabbit asked innocently. I certainly hope so, young one. I'm seeing for someone very important to me, the man replied with a quiet, kinda British-sounding voice, his gray eyes narrowing while shaded from the sun by the house, with a slightly snarky grin on his face. Meanwhile, at the same time, back in Eggman's secret lab. Gasp. Ah, I've returned, Sage confirmed to herself after getting over her shock and looking around. She looked down at the still eeping mysterious youth who she now knew was Goten once more. She gained a very sorrowful expression and out of compulsion raced over and hugged Goten's head with her whole body. The moment was interrupted by the door opening yet again, but instead of the doctor, it was someone or something else. Have you gotten any info for our creator yet, Sage? The visitor spoke robotically with a deep voice. Goten, at the sound of the voice, stirred awake at last, and the first thing his eyes locked onto were the soulless red glowing eyes of Metal Sonic. Oh sure mister, we can help you. Come on in and tell us who you're looking for. Cream accepted the green man's request, gesturing for him to enter the house. How thoughtful of you, the stranger thanked the little rabbit. And appropriate, he then added, whispering under his breath so that no one heard. Or so he thought as Rouge and Shadow's hypersensitive ears picked it up, making the secret agents narrow their eyes in suspicion. Why hello there, never seen you around here. Who might you be? Amy greeted their guest, kindly asking for his identity. Greetings little one, it is I, Zamasu, that has graced your presence, the stranger now known as Za. Masu introduced himself in a rather grandiose sounding tone, straightening his legs and spreading out his arms slightly as if he was presenting himself in a fashion show. Most of heroes of Mobius exchange NGED looks of shared feelings of bewilderment and awkwardness of Zamasu's over-the-top introduction. Amy, after blinking in confusion for a second, then gained a blushed, angered expression from Zamasu, addressing her as, little one. Just cause you're taller than most of us doesn't mean you have to call me short, Amy thought indignantly in her head. Well, nice to meet ya Zamasu. Sonic greeted Zamasu with a friendly smile, walking towards the green man and offering him a handshake. Instead of shaking his hand back like he expected, the blue blur was perplexed to see Zamasu glare at him with a disapproving frown. It's customary for others to greet me with a bow first, Zamasu hissed insistently. The blue hedgehog stood with a bewildered expression, his eyes blinking while the rest of his body froze like a statue for about 5 seconds before he abruptly let out an amused laugh. Ha ha, dude, I don't know how things work from wherever you're from, but we don't do stuff like that. We just say hi and give simple handshakes. Sonic Cavalry told Zamasu, never a fan of formal uptight gestures and rules. Zamasu was visibly upset at the fastest thing alive's dismissive cavalier attitude towards his preferred greeting procedure. Sonic's confused face returned upon noticing now with a hint of nervousness mixed in, not expecting their guest to be so bothered by just a handshake. The pointy ear, green man's gray eyes looked around a little, emitting a slight growl from his mouth before he closed his eyes and let out a deep breath, calming down, and looked back at Sonic. My apologies, if this is how you people make introductions, then I must respect that. Zamasu apologized for his rudeness, dropping his stiff posture and handshakes Sonic, to the latter's relief and gratitude. Just when their handshake ended, Zamasu's face got slightly smushed by Vector, who at that moment zoomed over to his side. So, I hear you need help tracking somebody down. Well, you can count on me and my team. The Chaotix Detective Agency, Vector offered excitedly. No case is too big or weird for us to solve. Charmy chimed in support of his friend boss. Could you give us a description of your missing friend? Oh, excuse me, is the lost one a friend or a fugitive? Is it a kid, your son, daughter, or is it your girlfriend? Charmy and Vector continued quest Zamasu incessantly without a second for either to take a breath, pushing him progressively up against the wall in comical fashion. Zamasu was left sweating with a mix of irritation and slight fear, with two of his company getting way too close to his face, as well as clearly trying his best not to lash out at them. Luckily, Espio walked in between his friends and Zamasu, pushing the former to a more appropriate distance. Please forgive my colleagues, they're just eager to the point of ignorance. Espio excused his friend boss's behavior with a sweat drop. Quite. Zamasu accepted the chameleon's apology, though with narrowed eyes glaring at Vector and Charmy. Anyway, the person I'm looking for, son Goten, Zamasu told the Sonic heroes. Unnoticed by anyone else, Knuckles let out a tiny gasp and his eyes widened in surprise. Goten, huh? No, I don't believe I've ever known anyone with that name. Anyone else here know a Goten? Sonic questioned his friends. No, Tails and Shadow answered bluntly simultaneously. Nope, Rouge, Cream and Charmy replied. Doesn't ring a bell, Amy and Vector answered. That's the man's name, Knuckles shouted, shocking everyone in the room. You mean this Goten guy is the one that destroyed Spagonia and nearly killed you guys? Vector questioned, exasperated with surprise. Yes, I heard his name in the vision I just had from Tikal. Knuckles confirmed. The heroes were left flabbergasted and turned towards Zamasu for answers, who bore a surprised, confused look himself. Tikal, how did this, Tikal, tell you of my friend? Zamasu inquired Knuckles. Her spirit showed me him as kid in that vision I told you I had. Knuckles explained to the best of his ability. Her spirit? You mean to tell me she's dead? How could she tell you anything if she's passed on? I was certain mortals like yourselves could not communicate with each other between the mortal realm and the afterlife, Zamasu asked the red echidna, perplexed. She's not really dead, her spirit resides within the Master Emerald. She did so to seal away something that was angered by her tribe's abuse of the Emerald's power to prevent it from destroying the world, Knuckles explained in brief to Zamasu, leaving out specific Tales of Chaos and the Chow to save time. Master Emerald, what exactly is this Master Emerald? Zamasu questioned, becoming curious, a grin forming on his face. Aren't you gonna tell us about Goten? Espio asked, taking notice that Zamasu seemed to all but forget about his dangerous friend. Yeah, why is he destroying our world? What made him like this? Amy prodded Zamasu in a sad tone, her arms together in a begging gesture. Could you please tell us? Sonic began. We'd all. Sonic's words were cut off when Shadow let out a fake cough. Ahem. I mean, most of us would really like to help him. Sonic continued, veins briefly appearing on his head in annoyance, giving the ultimate life form a slight glare before finishing, looking back at Zamasu with a more light-hearted expression and voice. I saw in my vision that something terrible happened to his family and home. It was like some kind of void that consumed everything. Does it have anything to do with that? Knuckles inquired the Kai further. Zamasu looked around at the Mobians and their faces, most of which expressed a sad longing for answers regarding his companion. After a few seconds he sighed and looked back at them all with a somewhat down look himself. Yes it does. You see, me and Goten are not from this universe, and he is not from this timeline, Zamasu began. Different universe. Timeline. What are you going on about? Rouge questioned, confused as was everyone else. There are 12 universes in total across space and time. Your universe is designated as the 6th universe. I am from the 10th and my friend resided in the 7th. And once more, time itself is every so often for one reason or another split into multiple different timelines, with each timeline having different paths and outcomes to all of existence. Goten lived in a timeline that unfortunately no longer exists, Zamasu explained further. To say the heroes were shocked would have been an understatement. Whoa, 12 universes. To think we've barely explored our own. And different timelines too. This is amazing. Tails celebrated, his scientific-minded eyes sparkling at the wonders of discovering new worlds and discoveries in alternate universes. I'm game for that too, just as long as they have good places for me to run. Sonic piped up. Excuse me, but maybe we should get back to the matter at hand, Shadow interrupted Sonic. And Tails daydreams before returning his attention back to Zamasu. What do you mean by his timeline no longer exists? Shadow inquired. The kid mentioned something about somebody named Goku, I'm assuming that he had something to do with it. Knuckles interrogated Zamasu further. I'm afraid so. Goku was Goten's father, Zamasu unveiled. Father. Nearly everyone in the house shouted in shock. While the couple that didn't still gained widened eyes. His daddy destroyed his home? Cream asked her, and Chow getting teary-eyed at the thought of anyone's parent ruining their child's life. Yes, through his carelessness, recklessness and sheer disregard for his or anyone else's lives, Zamasu spit out venomously. How did do that? Why did he do that? Amy screamed angrily, already wanting to give Goku a piece of her mind and a good whack with her hammer. He met up with Grand Zeno and the two came up with the idea to pin the strongest fighters of each universes against together in a tournament of power, Zamasu told the group. Grand Zeno? Who's he? Charmy chirped. The god of all of the 12 universes in each timeline are watched over and ruled by gods of destruction for, well, their title speaks for itself. Supreme Kais, the gods of creation and their angel attendants, and they are all led by Grand Zeno as well as his own angel, the Grand Priest. I in fact am the Supreme Kai of the 10th universe, Zamasu revealed, bowing gracefully to the heroes like he was reintroducing himself. Wow, you're one of the gods. That's incredible. Tails praised the Kai. Yes, I'm sure. It is for you, Zamasu said quietly to himself. What Goten nor I knew, however, was that it was decided by the two of them that the losing team's universes would be erased. Zamasu then informed the group of the dark truth. What? The entire guest room exclaimed in terror and horror at that revelation. Erased? You mean as in destroyed? Sonic yelled in extreme disbelief. Indeed, and unfortunately for Goten and his loved ones, the worst-case scenario came to pass. Goku and 9 of his fellow warriors, including his eldest son, fought valiantly, but in the end they were all knocked out of the ring, and because of that they and the entire 7th universe was erased, and all Goten could do was watch as they all vanished before his eyes, never to be seen again, not even in an afterlife, Zamasu explained the tragedy with a very depressed tone to his voice. Knuckles and the others were left, simply speechless at these revelations. Even Shadow, who had been advocating for the killer's death, was feeling a great amount of sorrow and sympathy. He tried to not make it obvious, turning away from everyone's eyes, but a single tear did leak from his own. Sonic, Knuckles, Espio, Vector and Rouge simply looked down at the floor while Tails, Charmy, Amy and Cream completely broke down and cried. As he let the story sink in, the Red Echidna thought back to his family and how Chief Pachacamac had how his own foolishness also led his tribe to near extinction. After a few moments a thought came to Knuckles' mind and he stifled his sadness to voice it. How did he survive? Knuckles questioned Zamasu. Because of me. A month prior to the tournament I had traveled to that timeline as part of my training to become a Supreme Kai. I was only an apprentice at the time. We became good friends during that time. Some of the best moments of my life, to be honest. I had gone back to my timeline beforehand, but through my crystal ball I watched him occasionally and thankfully I checked up on him and he was about to be erased, so without a second to spare I went back and got him before either of us would cease to exist. Zamasu told the group of his heroic deed. Most of the heroes gained huge smiles of relief, some outright cheering. Zamasu is a hero. Yay! Cream and Charmy shouted with glee, hugging each other, jumping up and down. Sounds like you're a pretty swell guy there, Zamasu. He's lucky to have you as a friend. Sonic congratulated the god, giving him his signature thumbs up. Unfortunately, like most, my good deed did not go unpunished, Zamasu lamented, sounding regretful before continuing. The poor boy, as you can imagine, was devastated. He lost literally everything in the blink of an eye, and very quickly his sorrow turned into rage and a thirst for vengeance. I tried to calm him down, but it was all in vain. He started training to gain the strength to one day kill other versions of Goku in the multiverse. I should have tried to lead him away from this dark path and get him to accept his second chance at life, but I couldn't say no to him. I felt terrible for his loss, so I helped him train. It didn't make his heartache less, however, and he spiraled further and further into darkness and insanity, eventually developing abilities that were fueled directly from the evil swelling in his being. It's gotten so powerful and so potent that it's like a demon inside him now. One that he can't control, Zamasu explained, horrifying everyone with the grim reality of the situation and why Goten seemed to possess strange powers. I am so sorry for all the destruction he has wreaked onto your world. Please help me find him, Zamasu pleaded with the Mobians. Of course we'll help you. You can count on us. Sonic accepted instantly, giving another thumbs up. Yeah, we'll help you. Find him and maybe together we can help him heal. Amy agreed with a determined yet loving tone, signifying that she intended to rescue Goten by any means necessary. And then he'll be a nice person again, be our friend too. Cream squealed adorable chow, cheering for her fantasy alongside Tails and Charmy. Vector gave out his own fiercely determined yell, yeah, communicating that he was going to help Goten too. Knuckles smiled widely. He would free this kid from Eggman's clutches. I'm not gonna let Dr. Eggman use that kid for his own gain. Let me at him. Knuckles pumped himself, throwing little air fists. Settle down there, Rad Red, we need to figure out where he is first, Rouge reminded Knuckles and the others. Dr. Eggman, Zamasu murmured out loud, befuddled by the bizarre name of their apparent enemy. Mad scientist, loves robots, wants to take over the world, has a huge ego and a waistline to match it. That's about the gist of the egg mystery you really need to know. Haha, Sonic Sue. Marie's Eggman for the Kai, lightly chuckling to himself. The doctor kidnapped him after I finally subdued him back in the city. I was too tired and weak to follow them. Grr, Shadow growled, now even more angry. He let Eggman take a child that needed help instead of just a simple psychopath punching the wall, creating a hole in it. We could try using our Chaos Emeralds to track Eggman, you know da. T-Man probably has at least one, Amy proposed. Yeah, most likely, but it's not a guarantee, and even if he does possess a Chaos Emerald, ours might lead us to the other emeralds before it takes us to Eggman specifically, and that'll leave Eggman more time to do whatever horrible things he plans to do with Goten. Zamasu and the Sonic heroes all began pondering how to track Goten down as fast as possible. Surprisingly, the one who comes up with the solution is Knuckles. Hey, I know, we'll use the Master Emerald. With my connection to it, I can ask it to tell me exactly where Goten is. Knuckles explained his idea to everyone excitedly. Yes, that'll work for sure, Tails encouraged Knuckles happily. Almost everyone in the house cheered. They now knew what they had to do and a decent idea of how to get to where they needed to go. While we're on our way to this Master Emerald, perhaps you can explain to me what exactly it and these other emeralds are. Zamasu requested humbly from Knuckles. Quote, sure thing Zamasu, we'll tell ya more on the way, Knuckles agreed. I think we're going to be great allies, you and me. What was it? Oh yes, Knuckles, Zamasu complimented the Red Echidna, offering a handshake of his own this time. You bet, Knuckles replied wholeheartedly, returning the shake. As they shook hands, however, Knuckles felt Tickle's presence again, not as powerful as before, but it was still noticeable. Mere microseconds after the feeling set in, Zamasu's kind face briefly flashed, looking more sinister, and the warm, dry, bright environment of Cream's mother's house was replaced by a black RP-lish dark room that felt cold and moist. The image only lasted for a second before Knuckles returned to reality, but it was enough to spook the Guardian, making him let out a huh and left with a perplexed look to his face. This action confused the group and Zamasu. "Are you all right?" the Kai asked Knuckles, raising an eyebrow to the echidna abrupt change in mood. Yeah, sorry, thought I saw something but it was nothing. Let's get going." Knuckles waved off Zamasu's concern and started walking out the door. The others followed suit, however one held back for a few seconds. Shadow had his arms crossed and his eyes narrowed. Though he believed a good bit of Zamasu's story, especially pertaining to Goten's lost family and universe. But in the back of his mind he had a sneaking suspicion Zamasu wasn't telling his role in the story honestly. The way he carried himself over him and the others at times since his arrival and his general aura gave off an uneasy vibe. He also could tell that Knuckles had seen something a second ago and could tell he was lying. Nevertheless, he too wanted to help Goten, so he walked right behind the rest of the gang, determined not only to save Goten and the world but to get to the truth behind this Zamasu character. Goten's tired eyes shot wide open in shock once his vision cleared itself of the coma-induced blurriness and could fully make out the blue robot standing before him. And upside down. It only took another half a second for the youth to then realize that he was laying down on a cold hard metal table in a dark gray room and that these green energy clamps were somehow keeping him bound down. Most oddly of all was what looked to be a strange little girl whose dress and pixelated aura was constantly blinking from a light blue to a dark red, hugging him, burying her head into his chest. All of this made the mentally ill young man very angry, and with a roar he bunked Sage off of him, sending her slamming onto the ceiling above them. Grr, where am I? Goten screamed in a fury, beginning to struggle with his energy restraints. The restraints bent and sparked, starting to be strained by the increasing force of their captor. Al Sonic's red eyes glowed as he got into a fighting stance, getting ready for an altercation with their prisoner. "Wait, stop, calm down, we're not gonna hurt you," Sage pleaded with the increasingly volatile young man, who was beginning to break and bend the operating table. "Speak for yourself, Sage." Metal Sonic contradicted Sage's words in a robotic manner that had a faint hint of malice in it. "Silence. Whatever you mortals are trying to do to me, I won't let you." Goten barked at Sage before his skin turned gray and his eyes darkened into black canvases with white glowing centers again, and he let out an ear-piercing shriek. His body enveloped itself in a black aura. The aura intensified as the demonic lunatic continued on, bashing and thrashing the energy cuffs now barely keeping him bound to the degenerating table. Unbeknownst to the deranged killer, as he struggled for his freedom, a small compartment of the operating table in the spot where his neck was opened up, opening was as wide and tall as his neck was. Out of this compartment a red collar-like object with Eggman's signature imprinted on it shot out and wrapped around and clamped onto his neck with a click. With one last violent scream, Goten's aura exploded, unleashing a powerful blast of dark purple energy that consumed the entire room the three were in. Both Sage and Metal Sonic could nothing, as their eyes were blinded by the flash, therefore unable to see the blast coming, and were caught in the middle of it. A minute later the light dissipated, as well as most of smoke and ash. Alarm with red blipping lights were going off as a response to the destruction. Amongst the piles of collapsed wall and ceiling, heavily bent and or scorched rubble and sparking torn wires, Goten stood tall. Now seemingly free from confinement, snarling and breathing heavily, his eyes losing their blackness and skin regaining his tan pigment. His pupils came back as well, though they remained a ghostly gray. Sunlight shone onto the escaped murderous youth, revealing that his explosion had blown a hole into one of the walls. He smiled with satisfied sinister smirk and lazily started floating out of the destroyed room. Flying outside revealed that the facility he was held in was built into a cliff on a rocky island in the middle of an ocean, with a steel gray tower with some red outlining sticky out the top, with yet again a logo of Dr. Eggman's face. "Now where are those colorful bunch of rodents I ran into last time? They will be so sorry once I find them and crush them beneath my feet. Especially those two hedgehogs. They'll be even more black and blue when I get my hands on what the..." Goten's brooding was interrupted. He heard a loud boom that came from his escape exit. He turned arrow to see within the hole that one of the piles of rubble had been blown apart, shrouding the remains of the room in dust once more. Suddenly, with a whir in the wind, a blue blur rocketed out of the dew Saint and rammed right onto Goten, sending both careening away further from the lab at breakneck speeds. "No, wait, Sage called out to the two, but both were too far away for either to hear her, and they likely wouldn't have listened anyway. Sage looked out the hole out to the shrinking dots of the two opposing fighters, very concerned and worried for them. Sage. Metal. Two boyish robotic voices. And one raspy deep one was then heard through the broken sliding door. It was quickly revealed to be Dr. Eggman himself, along with his two main robot assistants Orbot and Cubot, running and flying respectively and pushing themselves into the room through the damaged doors. What happened? Are you alright? Eggman asked frantically, kneeling down, lightly touching the back of Sage's pixelated hair to Uther, having quickly taken note of the wrecked lab and his daughter's sad, frazzled state. Did that mystery man hurt you? Cubot questioned Sage, getting in front of her, concerned for his sister. Tell me where went sis and I'll give him a piece of my hard drive. Orbot declared, determined, the square-headed yellow robot flexing and throwing punches with his non-existent muscles. No, I'm fine, but they aren't. If Goten or Metal Sonic get into a serious fight, one or both of them will die. Sage warned her family, scared for the two opponents' lives. Orbot and Cubot exchanged looks of worry and fear through their blue glowing eyes and mouthpieces, sharing Sage's concern over Goten and Metal. Ah ha 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 ho ho. Eggman suddenly erupted into his signature maniacal laughter. The three Robotnik siblings turned their heads in surprise and slight shock at seeing their creator laugh at a time like this. No need to fret, dear daughter. I installed a fail-safe for just such an occasion. For now, Huff, let's see if Metal can prove his worth and subdue this Goten specimen for me again. It'll be an entertaining show, don't you think? Ho ho ho. Eggman waved off his daughter's concerns with no hesitation, looking back to the fight, chuckling to himself in sadistic glee. Oh, what a relief. The boss always has a backup for every complication. Cubot beamed in admiration for their creator's advanced planning skills. Except for Sonic, that blue menace plows through all your plans like it's his Joe Clank. Orbit's retort was cut off by Eggman whacking his cube head at its top. You tell that aim infuriating overused bad joke again, you'll become part of the scrap heap. Eggman yelled, enraged at Orbit's poor excessive joke regarding his countless encounters with Sonic. Sage wasn't sure what her father's contingency plan was, comforting or more worrisome, as she turned her attention back to the battle. Back with Goten and Metal Sonic out at sea just beyond Eggman's base island. Get off of me! Goten screamed at the top of his lungs as he unleashed a huge blast of black energy, bunking Metal Sonic off of his chest, finally stopping them from traveling further away from the lab. Sonic stopped himself with his boosters on his feet after he went about a few feet away from Goten. Ah! Goten screeched as he charged up his energy and sped towards Metal Sonic. In retaliation, the robot did the same with its feet rockets, and both raced towards each other, colliding with each other. Their foreheads had connected and the two fighters were staring down each other's eyes, their auras intertwined as both were shakily locked into a standstill midair. Eventually, with a bang, both skidded a few inches away, then zoomed back towards each other, Goten readying a fist as he did. Sonic dodged the punch and then spun around, springing claws out of one of his hands, swiping for Goten's face. Goten blocked it with his arm, but his right face cheek got violently scratched by Metal's other hand. Ow! Grr! Take this! Goten growled, conjuring up a key blade in his hand and jabbed Metal in its chest area. This of course barely fazed the pain-numb robot, who with some effort pulled energy blade out of its chest and threw Goten's hand off roughly. While Goten was disoriented, Metal Sonic spun himself into all, rose up to meet Goten's head, stopped spinning and aimed a kick to the top of his target's head. Through a stroke of luck, Goten spotted this and quickly kicked up his own foot to block Metal's. Ha, you know, you kinda look like that giant blue hedgehog I ran into earlier. You move and attack a bit like him too. What are you anyway? Goten asked the robot he just knocked away with a punch, cockily taking notice of its resemblance to one of his previous intended victims. I am Metal Sonic. I am superior to my loathsome organic copy in every way. I am the real Sonic. Metal Sonic stated with a deep hatred-filled passion in his otherwise robotic tone. He's the copy of you. Ha 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 ha. Aha. Oh, who, I think you got it backwards there, you bucket of bolts. Goten insulted Metal Sonic, laughing at the absurdity of the robot's claims. Metal Sonic's red eyes glowed even brighter. Goten's words seeming to ignite something akin to anger within its circuitry. Some sparks erupted from its hands as they tightened into fists, as well as the one eye that got damaged by Goten's face punch. Ah, did I strike a nerve, whatever the robot version of a nerve is. Ha, good. If you wanted to be better than someone, don't pretend to be them. Take it from a guy who did the same thing, and then paid the price for believing in him. Like you are now. Goten ranted tauntingly, though gradually turned angrier as it went on. Metal Sonic's own rage broke, the man's rant having caught its interest. Its adversary did have a point. Throughout its entire existence since being built, it tried to be like Sonic and be better, only for the Blue Menace to show him up every single time. Perhaps it should consider changing its parameters a little bit. These thoughts of reflection would have to wait, cause now the robot copy of Sonic's sensors detected a massive amount of energy gathering in Goten's hands. Kamehameha! Ha! Goten exclaimed, firing a powerful beam of black energy right at the robot, seemingly consuming it. The ocean and the skies shook as the beam struck the ocean, creating a massive watery explosion. Both sky and sea illuminated and darkened at the same time like something out of an art painting. As the energy, water mist dissipated and the area's lighting returned to normal, Goten stared down to find his opponent gone from sight. HMPH, that'll teach you mortals that a mere machine cannot stand against my div, huh? Goten's monologue was cut off and he noticed a disturbance in the ocean below him. A small child-sized spot in the ocean in the shape of a circle, instead of being pristine blue like the rest, was a discolored blackish color. Within moments something had arose. Metal Sonic. Having survived the blast by using his black shield, Metal Sonic's shield quickly faded away after it had gotten out of its curled-up position and back into a fighting one. Goten, instead of being upset for once, actually gained a small excited smile, his fangs glinting with some form of dark glee. Huh, who survived that attack? I must say I'm kinda impressed. No one except my master has been able to keep up with me like this in a long while, certainly not for this long. Goten praised his metallic foe, enjoying the workout it was giving him. I'll do better. Then keep up, Metal Sonic said with a deadly low tone, his eyes flashing brighter with killer intent. Metal Sonic sped across the water, then flew up into the sky, curving around as he did, clearly aiming to strike Goten on his back. Goten, however, smirked, realizing what the robot was trying to do. Kai Kai! Goten shouted before suddenly vanishing. Metal Sonic stopped instantly, his hard drive brain unable to process where or how his target disappeared without a trace. Surprise! Goten's voice rang out from behind the robot before grabbing into a full Nelson. Ha ha, gotcha, good luck getting yourself out of this one tin can. Goten taunted his caught prey. The mass murderer then started plummeting down, plunging himself and Metal into the sea. They kept traveling deeper and deeper into the dark blue depths, Goten smiling sinisterly while holding his breath. Though Nelson Ed, Metal could still move his hands, and luckily his opponent was bigger than him, meaning it was really easy for him to put his hand on the man's shoulder and electrocute him. Goten let go of Metal, spazzing out in pain, trying desperately to keep his mouth shut, moaning in agony. The electrocution stopped, and before Goten could recover, Metal Sonic punched him hard straight in his gut. Goten's eyes bulged out and his mouth involuntarily opened, releasing blood that had been driven up by Metal's punch. Instantly Goten began to drown, attempting to close his mouth before he died, but just when he was about to, Metal Sonic grabbed his mouth with one hand and his throat with the other. His grip on Goten's throat tightened while he kept Goten's mouth open. Goten was now officially panicking. He could feel water rushing into his lungs and his vision was started to darken and become dizzy. The only thing he could see, as his insides burned with salt water and his throat felt more and more tight, was Metal's emotionless face and soulless red eyes. As Goten's flailing limbs started to rest from exhaustion and he almost lost consciousness, abruptly Metal Sonic let go of his throat but not his mouth. The robot took Goten, spun him around and around for about 10 seconds and then threw Goten upwards, launching him to the surface. Blay! Gah! Ah ha ha ha! Goten threw up all the water out of his system and then gasped, taking heavy deep breaths to regain oxygen. Metal Sonic slowly reemerged from the ocean depth. THS just in time to see Goten fully catch his breath, intending to drag the fight out a tad longer. Though no one could tell by his face alone, he was having fun and he wanted to see if this powerful Anchild had any more tricks up his sleeves. You dare, NHHGG, ah, ta da 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 da. Goten screeched with bloodshot eyes in near madness, now shooting a bunch of energy projectiles out of both his hands in quick succession of each other. Metal easily avoided the barrage and zoomed to Goten's left side. Goten noticed and halted his energy barrage to block Metal's incoming kick with his arm. The two kicked and punched at each other, both being able to counter each other's attacks, sending shockwaves across the sky and sea. Eventually Metal got a punch in Goten's forehead. The mass murderer backing away and rubbing his head a bit, he then rapidly fired another Kamehameha at Metal. The killer robot, however, just as quickly shot out a beam of blue energy out of his chest. The two were now locked into a beam struggle. Ah! Goten yelled, injecting more energy into his beam. Metal couldn't counter, so his beam was consumed, and since he didn't have enough time to make a shield this time, he was blasted a fair distance away. But the robot quickly recovered, stopping himself about a football stadium distance apart from his foe. It began to spin itself around sideways rapidly and fire RTED surrounding his body as it rocketed back towards Goten, who was caught off guard and was slammed by Metal Sonic's flaming body, sending him flying back all the way back to Eggman's island. Oof. Goten screamed in pain as he crashed back onto the somewhat sandy beach of the island, his clothing ripped, torn and smoking from Metal's fiery attack. He lied face first into a crater his impact created right as Eggman, Sage, Orbot and Cubot came running, floating onto the scene. "Whoa Nelly, Metal roughed this guy up good," Orbot remarked on Goten's battered state. "Do you think he's down for the count?" Cubot inquired curiously. "Come, let's keep our distance for a few minutes and see if he stays down, then we'll recollect him, heh," Eggman ordered his robot children, while HTLY laughing at his near recapturing of his specimen. Sage looked at Goten with sad pity-filled eyes. Her aura and eyes remained blue and dress remained white for an extended period of time, hoping Goten was alright. Just then Metal Sonic arrived onto the beach, touching down onto the ground, staring down at the downed body of his victim. "Ooh, look, Metal is back." Orbot cheered for his older brother's return. "Metal Sonic, are you okay?" Sage asked Metal, very concerned for his well-being, especially considering his body's damaged state. "Affirmative," Metal answered simply with a nod, briefly turning to look at Sage before immediately returning his attention to Goten. Just in time to cause right at that moment Goten's whole upper body shot up, revealing his enraged, half-crazed looking expression. The whole Eggman clan, even the normally stiff as a brick wall Metal Sonic, jumped at the sight. "I've had a nug HH. Goten screamed, sounding completely and utterly ballistic as dark purple energy erupted all around him, and his hair began to stand up and blink from its usual black to a new color, pink. The madman kept on roaring in a pained rage, his power growing exponentially, and his hair kept flashing between black and pink. Simultaneously his eyes were also flashing between black and gray. Eventually the dark purple energy obscured Goten from sight, and his roars became muffled by the churning and whirring of the aura. The winds and shockwaves were increasingly intense, rippling across the sand, the ocean, and even the clouds in the sky. Sage put an energy shield in front of herself, Eggman, Orbot and Cubot to protect themselves from the harsh storm-like conditions. Metal did the same, but only for himself. Eventually the energy began winding down and Goten was unveiled to the eyes of the island inhabitants, but he had changed. His hair was now permanently standing up, defying gravity, and was a mesmerizing bright pink color now. His pupils had become ghostly grayish. His teeth four distinct fangs, while the rest remained normal size but had also sharpened. His previously human fingernails had also sharpened into small claws. Eggman, Sage and the three brother robots could only look on in awe and wonder at Goten's new form. "Like it? It's called Super Saiyan Rose. Take a good look, cause it's the last thing you will ever see," Goten announced confidently, declaring the Eggman clan as good as dead. Goten stared at Metal Sonic with a killer smile and then without warning fired a key blast at the metal nuisance. Metal rose his right hand to block it, but when the blast reached him, instead of phasing out or bouncing away, it destroyed its arm. Metal's mostly emotionless eyes shrunk slightly in astonishment and shock, as did everyone else. "Uh-oh, I think Metal might be in trouble, boss," Cubot pointed out to his creator. "No," Sage exclaimed, not wanting any of this to happen. She loved Metal Sonic like a brother, and she hated seeing this man who had lost everything as a child being a destroyer himself. Goten then blipped out of sight, only for him to reappear behind Metal and strike him with an energy blade at the head, almost cutting Metal's head into two. Sonic sparked and shook for a second, the heavy damages to his body making his systems malfunction and go haywire slightly. Goten finished by kicking Metal into the air just above him and blasted him with an energy blast midair. The blue robot came tumbling down, smoking, its metal body cracked or dented in many places, and his eyes blinked on and off. "Ha ha, serves you right for challenging a god. When you get to hell, tell them to make some room," Goten uttered menacingly while charging up another key blade, preparing to take the robot offline for good. "Stop, please Goten, don't do this." Sage egged Goten with a hoarse voice, flying to right in front of Metal, putting her hands up, eyes watery. "Ooh, two for the price of one. Ha ha ha." The lunatic laughed, not fazed by her plea at all, and raised his complete blade to strike both her and Metal out. "Okay, I'm putting an end to this right now," Eggman suddenly declared in an oddly casual manner as he reached for his pockets. Goten overheard this. and turned to look at Eggman just in time to see the mad scientist pull out a simple one-button remote, pressing it. After that, the collar that had been put on Goten before his escape made a clicking sound. Tightened around his neck a little tighter, and then Goten was violently electrocuted with purple lightning. It was a lot more powerful than Metal Sonic's electric attack from earlier, Goten screaming in extreme pain. Even veins were showing across his face. The robot siblings except Metal Sonic were visibly shocked at this brutal form of torture, while Eggman just grinned evilly. With another press of the button, the collar was deactivated and Goten collapsed onto his knees, dropping back to his normal form, gasping for breath. "Father, what did you do to him?" Sage shrieked at her maker, overwhelmed and a bit angry that he would do something like this to a troubled kid. "That collar I put on him turns his own power against him, giving him reason to obey me less he wants to be put permanently on ice." "Oh ho 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 ho," Eggman explained. Sage looked down at the ground, unsure of how to feel about her father's methods. On one hand, she was glad he did so Metal Sonic's life was saved, but on the other it was cruel and unusual. "HNG. YU. GNH. You're dead after I get this goddamn contraption of Da." Goten snarled at the mad doctor, attempting to remove the collar off, but as soon as Hi's hands touched it, a less powerful shock was given to him as a result. "Heh. The collar is programmed to give you a shock if you attempt to remove it, and each subsequent shock will be more painful than the last, so if I were you, young man, I'd leave it alone and behave yourself from now on. Do I make myself clear?" Eggman delivered his ultimatum to Goten with a sinister grin plastered onto his face, holding the remote for emphasis. Goten glared daggers at Eggman, but he saw no way out at the moment, so he lowered his head and murmured, "Yes sir. Excellent, now return to my laboratory, We have more tests to run on you and matters to discuss," Eggman said as he turned around, walking away, gesturing for Goten and the rest to follow him back to his base of operations. As Goten picked himself up, he turned back towards Metal Sonic, who had just barely levitated to be right next to him. "This fatso is your master?" Goten questioned the robot, disgusted with the thought. "Not by choice," Metal Sonic coldly replied. "I heard that," Eggman shouted, having overheard both Metal and Goten, pulled out a separate remote and pressed its button and mildly electrified Metal Sonic. "You put a shocking device on Metal Sonic too, father?" Sage asked, exasperated, clearly not happy with it. "In him, sweetheart, I put one in him, now come along," Eggman answered his daughter disturbingly casually, Orbot and Cubot following close behind. That answer plus the calm way he said it made Sage even more unsettled, but for now she shook it off and went back to help Goten and Metal Sonic, both of which were moving also due to their injuries. "Come on, I'll help you," she said tenderly, taking Goten's arm with one of her own and taking Metal's with the other. As Sage lifted them up back to the base, Goten and Metal Sonic exchanged looks. Now not made out of hate but of curiosity of each other, and in Metal's case, how could it possibly benefit him? The Mobius heroes and the 10th Universe Supreme Kai had just exited Vanilla's house. The rabbit mother herself waving them away. In the yard, Tails' plane, the X-Tornado 2 and Vector's Beat Monster sports car were parked. "So where do we go from here to find this Master Emerald of which you speak?" Zamasu asked the gang. "It's on the floating island in the Sky Angel Island," Tails answered. "I can give you a lift in my X-Tornado." Tails offered him running towards his parked personal aircraft that resembled a crop duster, was mostly blue with some yellow outlines with a logo representing the Fox's signature. Two Tails, Amy and Cream following him. "Ha ha, no need." Zamasu declined the offer as his feet effortlessly started levitating off the ground. "Whoa, huh, what the?" Most of the Sonic heroes exclaimed in total shock and surprise of the Kai's flight. "What?" Zamasu questioned them, all confused by their reactions. "You can fly. How are you flying without wings or two tails like Tails?" Sonic inquired, exasperated. "It's an inherent power us gods, though I'm surprised you've never done it yourself, as it is a common and very easy technique to perform even for you mortals," Zamasu replied a little cockily. No, we haven't, at least not when we're not in our super forms," Amy Rose confirmed with a little bit of an sour tone because of the way Zamasu worded his assumption. "You saw Goten fly when he assaulted you people earlier, right?" Zamasu asked, cocking an eyebrow up. "Oh yeah," most of the group uttered in realization except Shadow and Espio, who just sighed and rubbed their foreheads in frustration at their friend's collective obliviousness. "Heh, with all the chaos that was going on, I guess that completely slipped our minds, heh," Sonic sheepishly reasons, rubbing the back of his head nervously. "So you say now then, what direction?" Zamasu responded, sounding mildly perturbed at first before relaxing up a bit. "This way. Follow us." Cream cheered as she, Amy and Cheese got themselves situated into their seats and Tails fired up the X-Tornado. In the meantime we'll look for Goten and Eggman here on the ground, we'll contact you if we see anything. Vector promised, briefly straightening up and putting a fist on his chest before jumping into the beak monster and started it up, Charmy and Espiso right behind him. Both parties started up their respective vehicles as engines and started on their laden paths, Vect or in his crew driving off in a random direction and the X-Tornado taking off into the sky, setting course for Angel Island, Zamasu trailing right behind them. Sonic, Knuckles and Shadow remained on T. He ground staring at the X-Tornado and Zamasu just as they started getting up to the clouds, the latter with a sternly focused expression. The blue blur then shifted his attention to the ultimate life form with a mischievous grin on his face before saying, "So Shadow you?" Sonic's question was cut off by Shadow abruptly boosting away to follow Zamasu and Tails. Sonic's face faltered into one of annoyance. "Shadow, you wanna race?" "Oh no thanks Sonic, maybe another time, is that so hard?" Sonic yelled, annoyed with Shadow's impoliteness, briefly mimicking the Black Hedgehog's voice to mock him. "Let it go Sonic, you know how Shadow is. Let's just get going and meet with the others." Knuckles talked Sonic down calmly, for once acting like the voice of reason. "Sigh, yeah, I'm just a little testy still. After the argument we had a few minutes ago, boy, never thought I'd have to be calmed down by you of all people, heh." Sonic chuckled lightly, teasing the red echidna. "What's that supposed to mean?" Knuckles inquired, sounding peeved, a noticeable vein showing on his head. "Ah, there's our normal hothead knucklehead, heh. Alright, let's run." Sonic made some fun of his friend again before grabbing said friend's hand, and the two zoomed off in the same direction as the others to rendezvous with their friends and Zamasu at Angel Island. Back at the Eggman base, a large crew of mostly orange colored drone robots were busy repairing the damages to the laboratory Goten had escaped from earlier. The troubled youth himself had been put into yet another room earlier and told to wait for further instruction. His new corridors had many hidden devices that wirelessly monitored the young man's energy readings and overall health. Metal Sonic at the same time had taken himself over to the auto repair room to get his body patched up. Eggman and his other robot children had retired to the main computer room to look over the results sent to them by the monitoring devices in Goten's room. "So he lost his homeworld, you say?" Eggman asked Sage, the unconventional father and daughter duo sitting together in the center module. "Indeed father, it was like it was being erased by some overwhelmingly powerful force that I cannot even begin to process," Sage muttered, stuttering, looking down at the ground, sounding like she was barely holding back sorrow. Perhaps it was that same moon-like entity. Why, that destroyed the ancient's home world," Eggman theorized. "Father, are we going to help Goten?" Sage questioned Eggman. "Of course my girl, I will help him with eradicating that blue pest from both our lives once and for all by granting him some much-needed training and upgrades." "Ho ho ho," Eggman exclaimed boastfully. "Wah, but father, he's just a poor damaged child. You can't seriously be thinking of using him as a weapon." Sage argued back at her dad in a mixture of shock and anger. "But of course I am. The data I've collected is showing that he possesses extraordinary levels of power. Or that puts my grandfather's Eclipse cannon to shame. I'd be crazy not to use him as a weapon." Eggman explained away his cruel intentions with evil glee. Sage couldn't help but stare at her father, horrified mouth agape at his plan. None of this felt right to her. Goten was suffering from some kind of horrible trauma, as well as some mysterious malevolent force within his body, and all her father could think about was how to use him to destroy Sonic. I'm going to go check on him, if that's okay with you, father," Sage asked Eggman in a conflicted tone. "You can check on him through this console, you know, Sage. There's no need for you to physically go there in," Eggman was pointing out when Sage abruptly cut him off. "I wanna speak to him in person." "Father," Sage shouted in a rather snappy manner before taking a breather and finishing more politely. Eggman was taken aback by the aggression laced in his daughter's normally sweet and calm voice. The Mad Doctor had heard Sage being upset before, but that was only when she was sad and/or confused. This was the first time she had ever sounded angry. "Alright Sage, do as you wish," Eggman awkwardly gave Sage approval. Sage didn't say anything back to her father. She simply turned around and floated out of the room onto her destination. Once he thought Sage was out of earshot, Eggman turned to look at Orbot and Cubot with expression of confusion mixed with some hurt. "What was that about?" Eggman questioned the two remaining robot siblings. Orbot just glared at their creator, his robotic eyes though lacking pupils narrowed to convey that he wasn't happy either. Don't have a clue, boss, Cubot answered cluelessly, which annoys his red round-headed counterpart who shifts his glare to him. Eggman grumbles in annoyance at Cubot's inexplicable stupidity and focused back onto the monitors on his console displaying Goten's condition. Abruptly the screen's display changed slightly as the equipment had just detected something rather peculiar within the otherworldly visitor's body, highlighted by a black formless substance that flowed throughout their captive's being, with the highest concentrations being found in the heart and brain. Fascinating, Eggman eyed the reading, a wicked smile of anticipated victory spreading across his face. In Goten's quarters, Goten was sitting on a bed in the room he was assigned by Eggman. The troubled youth appeared to be more troubled than earlier because his eyes were wide open and shaking constantly, and he was letting out soft moans and whimpers. He's startled out of his trance when the door of his quarters slides open to reveal Sage with a concerned expression. "Hi Goten, are you doing better now?" Sage cautiously inquired, Goten floating over, taking a seat right next to him as the door slid back closed. Goten's disheveled face quickly morphed into an angry glare as the murderous manchild put up a hard front, both to cover up his obvious distress as well as intimidate the bizarre pixelated girl. "What do you mortals want with me? Do you intend to use me to be your royal fool? A slave to do all your physical labor, or perhaps as a weapon to win your wars?" Goten aggressively interrogated Sage, making her back up against the wall of the room in sheer fright, caught off guard. "No, I'm not here to make to anything like that. I just want to learn more about you and why you are so broken," Sage fearfully answered, holding her hands over her head shakily in defense of a potential offense from the troubled youth, yet still sounding sincere. "Broken? I'm not broken, I am a god," Goten exclaimed in a fury, but his rage somewhat breaks when something hits him in his mind, a flash of the memory of him drowning earlier. At least I'm supposed to be. Goten Ngrilly muttered, his rigid shell starting to crack along with the whiteness in his eyes. I do not understand, why do you believe yourself to be an immortal godlike being?" Sage asked, perplexed by Goten's claims, as their earlier tests of his autonomy showed no hints of divinity or immortality. "Because that's what my master promised me. He promised me after the baptism I'd be a god like him. But I nearly died today. When that robot had me in its clutches in the water, I felt the cold sting of death. I died once before a long time ago, so I know what it feels like, and I felt it again today." Goten screamed his lungs out, his tone gradually transitioning from angry to sounding panicky and sad, his eyes even beginning to water, turning back to normal. Sage uncurled out of her self-protective position, looking on at Goten, feeling horrible for him, realizing that Goten was in the throes of a seemingly delusional despair, his clearly damaged and brainwashed psyche unable to cope with his near-death experience and believing he once raised from death. The two were so preoccupied that neither noticed that the door slid back open. Did I do something wrong? Is it because I failed at killing those rodents from earlier? Did he take away my godhood because I got beaten by a couple hedgehogs and then captured by some fatso and his tin cans and whatever the hell you are? Tell me, please, master, tell me." Goten screeched out, his hoarse voice ringing throughout the laboratory, tears now flowing out of his eyes. The troubled youth collapsed to his knees, watery eyes looking up at the ceiling longingly while whimpering. Sage levitated closer to Goten, putting her hand on his shoulder, trying to soothe him, and opened her mouth to ask a question when they hear another deep robotic voice behind them. "Perhaps your master hasn't been truthful to you," the voice said. Both Sage and Goten recognized the voice, and their suspicions were confirmed when they whipped their heads around to see a fully restored Metal Sonic at the room's entrance. "Metal, how are you doing?" Sage greeted the infamous automaton happily, glad to see her brother repaired and fully functional again. "Much improved. I am completely operational once more," Metal Sonic replied firmly, with a touch of satisfaction laced in. Goten gritted his teeth, glaring daggers at the blue automaton that nearly killed him mere hours ago and just insulted his master. "Watch it, you tin can. My master is the god of all universes and my best friend. And I am his apprentice, the god of justice. To speak ill of him is to earn a slow and painful death." Goten defended his master fiercely, putting up and cracking one of his fists. "That's so. Well Goten, so-called god of justice, if you've truly achieved divinity, how is it possible that I nearly extinguished your life force?" Metal Sonic taunted the self-proclaimed god, purposefully echoing the contradiction Goten had plaguing his mind. "Metal," Sage yelled at Metal Sonic, chast icing him for cruelly antagonizing Goten. "You dare!" Goten growled, enraged, his fangs glistening and his eyes turning a little gray as he gathered a ball of black energy into his fist and marched towards the insufferable machine. "Stop, both of you please," Sage pleaded sadly with some anger to the two opposing fighters, getting in between them holding out her hands. Stupid little shit, get out of my awe. Goten tried to slap Sage out of the way but was stopped by the shock collar Dr. Eggman put on him earlier. Apparently the collar was programmed to shock him if he ever tries to harm Sage as well. After the shock stopped, Goten stammered back, getting onto one knee, breathing heavily, smoke coming off his clothes and hair. Sage ran to Goten's side to help him up. My apologies for riling you up. But given the data I've collected from our battle and your emotional meltdown, my inquiry is not without reason, Metal Sonic stated, matter-of-factly, half apologizing, something that surprised Goten and made Sage smile. Let us try this from a different angle. In all the years you've known this master of yours, has he ever been untruthful to you before with some other subject matter? Metal Sonic asks, deciding to get answers through another route. This time, Metal Sonic's inquiry struck a chord with Goten rather than a nerve, his previously half-closed pained eyes opening wide and his head shot upwards as he let get out a gasp. Why yeah, he did once, Goten revealed as the memory replayed in his head. What did he lie to you about? Sage asked, becoming curious herself now. When we first met, I asked him what he was. He told me he was a superhero on a secret mission, but a month later, just before he left for a while, he then revealed to me that he was a supreme Kai studying mortals. Go. 10 elaborated to the two Eggman siblings. Interesting. Now Goten, while this info doesn't admittedly outright prove that he lied to you, being a god yourself now, doesn't the fact that he has been confirmed to have done so once raise the possibility that perhaps he has done it again? Metal Sonic theorized, laying out the possibilities now opened with this revelation. The self-proclaimed god of justice was left stunned and without words. As much as he tried to deny it, the blue robot had successfully poked a major hole in his beliefs and philosophy. His master had indeed lied to him at least one time that he was aware of. So did he tell him any more? He had told him he was immortal, yet he clearly wasn't. He felt the water filling his lungs and his vision went dark, swearing that he even a glimpse of the Grim Reaper itself reaching out for him. I don't maybe he just made a mistake. Yeah, maybe he sincerely thought merging with Yumibozu would make me immortal but was wrong. Goten proposed his counter-argument, though it was clear from his shaky and lost-sounding tone that he was not certain of his own words himself. Yumibozu, Sage muttered questionably, the name catching her attention. Metals too, as shown by a slight head tilt, though he quickly reset it to straight and said, while we wait to hear more from Eggman, why don't we take this time to test out other aspects of divinity to gauge their accuracy, and while we're at it we'll exchange more information about each other. Yes, that sounds amazing. You up for it, Goten? Sage encouraged the idea, extremely happy and excited that Metal Sonic, her normally standoffish and at times very deadly brother, not only willing to spend time with her and others but also being the one to suggest it and seemingly having intentions of helping with the troubled youth's plight. The confused young man pondered the offer for a few seconds but fairly quickly, seeing as how he couldn't really do much else besides lazing arrow in his quarters or interacting with his captors, and that he was beginning to doubt his master, he nodded and muttered, sure. Yay. Sage squealed cutely, grabbing Metal Sonic and Goten close, giving both a hug. One of Goten's eyes twitched, being a little uncomfortable and weird being hugged, both because he hadn't been hugged in years and due to the hugger being immortal. Still, if one looked closely enough, his mouth curved up slightly, showing that part of him enjoyed it. On the opposite side of the embrace, Metal Sonic's blood-red eyes glowed brighter as he stared at his sister and Goten. His thoughts unknown, but clearly he was thinking, learning and absorbing, to the obliviousness of his two newly attained pawns. Zamasu, Sonic and the rest of the heroes of Mobius arrived at Angel Island, coming to rest at the Master Emerald in its shrine. There it is, the Master Emerald, the most powerful known object in our universe. Tails announced to Zamasu excitedly as he and his other passengers exited the X-Tornado. And the jewel of my dreams, Rouge muttered in a dreamy tone, holding her hands together as her green greed-filled eyes reflected off the Master Emerald. Don't even think about it, Knuckles warned the infamous jewel thief harshly with a growl to his voice, causing said thief to slightly giggle and back away slightly in playful fake fear. The Supreme Kai stared at the magnificent gargantuan gem, its beautiful shining green light illuminating his equally green skin. His mouth hung agape as the Kai slowly marched up the shrine's stairs till he was mere centimeters away from it. Placing one of his hands on it. My word, the 10th universe, Kai muttered in awe of the gem as he felt the extraordinary power within the Master Emerald, its sheer scale, its ever-changing dynamics, simultaneous complexity and simplicity, and its general chaotic nature. It certainly lent credence to the stories the colorful bunch of heroes had told him on their way to this shrine. The gem was truly the creation of gods in his eyes. Zamasu's stunned expression morphed into an unnervingly crooked smile unseen by the heroes. Oh yes, this will do nicely, Zamasu praised the emerald. With a slightly sinister undertone that only Shadow and Amy picked up on, both cocking their eyebrows. Then Zamasu put both of his hands onto the Master Emerald. Do you think you can tap into the Master Emerald to lead us to Goten? Sonic asked curiously. What kind of a question is that, mortal? Of course I can. I am a god. I can do that and more. And I shall. Zamasu responded very jubilantly, rapidly turning back to face the others, his expression a rather off-putting mix of joy and power-hungry glee. Okay, Sonic nervously uttered, him and all the other heroes of Mobius bewildered by Kai's strange behavior at what they assumed would be nothing special for a deity like him. Maybe the Master Emerald was a big deal even for most gods, many of them wondered in their minds. Zamasu too, RNED back to face the Master Emerald once more, placing both of his hands onto it, intending to harness its power to accomplish their mission. He concentrated and soon his mind linked with the dormant chaos energy within the gem. However, upon the mental connection's formation, the previously inactive energy came alive, and not in a good way. Zamasu immediately felt something was wrong, and he had microseconds to wonder why before the Master Emerald's green glow suddenly turned purple and become violently charged. It was shooting out bolts of purple lightning in every direction except thankfully the front where Zamasu and the heroes of Mobius were standing. What the? Zamasu, what's going on? Knuckles screamed out to the Kai. Neither he nor any of his friends had ever seen the Moss Tear Emerald do something like this before, and it didn't look good. I don't. Zamasu's reply was halted when the lightning abruptly enveloped the Master Emerald and began electrocuting him. The Sonic heroes watched in horror as the intense chaos lightning painfully coursed through Zamasu's body. As it did so, half of the 10th universe Kai's green skin turned a dark purple and appeared like it was melting. At the same time, on the same side of his changing skin, one of his arms became majorly swollen from his wrist to his shoulder. His face wasn't spared either, half of its skin also turning purple and goopy. One of his eyes changing from its deep gray with black iris to a striking purple with yellowish iris, and most bizarrely two of his teeth, one from his upper teeth and its lower teeth counterpart sharpening into minor fangs. Hang on, Knuckles shouted out, rushing up the shrine past his friends, grabbing onto Zamasu's good hand. As one probably expected, some of electrical chaos energy started passing on from Zamasu's body into Knuckles. However, unexpectedly the energy didn't hurt the red echidna. In fact, though, the method of which it was being done caused some pain. The energy infused itself with Knuckles, and for a few seconds his red quills glowed and turned bright pink. It was also during this brief power-up that Knuckles hoisted Zamasu and himself off and away from the Master Emerald, landing back on the grassy field somewhat roughly. Mere seconds after the Kai's contact was severed, the Master Emerald immediately reverted back to its normal state. Its immense energy finally settling back down and returning to its healthy green-colored glow. Knuckles, are you okay? Sonic questioned extremely worriedly, him zipping to Knuckles' side, all their friends arriving seconds later. Knuckles groaned as he picked himself up fairly quickly, wordlessly answering Sonic's question. He and most of his companions, however, gasped at the sight of Zamasu. Huff, they witnessed his body's transformation while he was being electrocuted, none of it fully sunk in until now. The 10th universe Kai was just as flabbergasted as they were, his good hand rubbing across his bad hand's mutated skin. What in the? Zamasu questioned himself, his voice quivering with confusion and fear. Amy hastily got down on her knees next to Zamasu and touched his bad arm to examine it. HMPH, don't touch me, Zamasu yelled at Amy, slapping her hand away and hitting her cheek hard. The group was shocked by the god's actions, Shadow in particular getting quite angry. Hey, what the hell did you do that for? The black hedgehog scolded Zamasu angrily, getting in between the Kai and the hurt Amy. Zamasu, though still visibly agitated, darted his eyes and his expression felt when he noticed that they were all giving him looks. Oh, my apologies, Amy rose. My hand just hurts so much right now, it was a reflex, I didn't mean to hurt you, Zamasu explained himself, showing remorse for his harsh reaction. The Sonic heroes had mixed receptions to Zamasu's excuse. Knuckles and Cream totally bought it and smiled, the former relating to the Kaiju of his own history of reacting to certain things the wrong way. Sonic and Tails nodded but still held faces of skepticism. Shadow and Amy stared back with angry glares, clearly not believing Zamasu at all, the former walking over to help the latter up. All right, but seriously, what the heck happened there? Knuckles inquired the Kai again. I'm just as puzzled about that as you are. I thought for sure this gem of the god's wool. Do obey me as I am a god, Zamasu expressed his prideful befuddlement. Well, the Master Emerald has been in the sole care of the Knuckles clan for at least the past 4,000 years. Perhaps it's been so long since any gods bothered to tend it, it no longer recognizes them or you as a descendant of its creators and therefore it rejected you. Tails theorized the cause of the Master Emerald's painful reaction towards Zamasu. Are you gonna be okay, Mr. Zamasu? You don't look well, Cream asked concerned, pointing at his deformed skin and the other slight mutations done to half his body. Oh, I'm quite certain I'll be fine, little one. This will all fade away in time, Zamasu assured the little rabbit girl, though as he spoke he glanced at his malformed arm with a noticeable look of uncertainty. Some flakes of his purple skin shedding off as if to mock him. So I guess I can't access the emerald's power at the moment, Zamasu muttered somewhat bitterly at the revelation. It's alright, Zamasu, I'll give it a try next. Although now that I'm thinking about it, I've never tried locating a specific person with the Master Emerald before. I've located the 7 Chaos Emeralds and pieces of the Master Emerald whenever it was broken, but never a person. Knuckles contemplated scratching his head, now unsure if their plan would work. Zamasu uttered, putting on his own thinking hat. It was and that the Kai recalled the tale of when the Master Emerald showed the heroes of Mobius visions of the past. Perhaps the answer to our problems lies in the distant past. I recall that this divine once clued you all in on how a monster of legend in your world came to be. What was it called again? Zamasu proposed questioningly with a knowing tone. Chaos, and yeah, the Master Emerald showed you. What made him so angry. My ancestors made a rash decision for power and it cost them and later us dearly. Knuckles recounted the memory, sorrowfully closing his eyes and lowering his head in shame. Eel Sonic and most of his friends showed inklings of sympathy of Knuckles' family troubles. Zamasu's prideful grin widened further and his eyes narrowed, a dark look appearing in his eyes as if Knuckles' plight intrigued him more than anything else. I understand that this is more than a little uncomfortable for you, but need I remind you that Goten is in the hands of this nefarious Dr. Eggman Cha Raptor and we have no clue where they are, so discovering the secrets of the Master Emerald may be our only hope of saving him and potentially your entire world from perishing. The Kai urged the Red Echidna. Knuckles reopened his eyes and looked up to face Zamasu, and with a distraught but determined expression he nodded. The group recomposed itself and regathered where they were before, only now with Knuckles in front of Zamasu. Knuckles placed both his hands onto the Master Emerald and took a deep breath. The Severs are the 7 Chaos. Chaos is power. Power enriched the heart. The controller is the one that unifies the chaos. Knuckles incited the ancient mantra passed down for generations by the Knuckles clan when using the Master Emerald. In response, the Master Emerald became active again, but this time it was a positive reaction. The gem's glow intensified, turning white and became as bright as the sun. Everyone except Knuckles and Zamasu shielded their eyes as the light consumed the area. After what felt like a couple minutes, the light began to dim and slowly Sonic and his friends reopened their eyes. Once their vision cleared, they could see that Knuckles and Zamasu were gone. I hope they're both okay, Cream meekly hoped, she's agreeing with her, chirping next to her. Guys, something is up with Zamasu, Shadow brought up seriously, stepping in front of everyone, Amy joining I am close by, still holding her injured cheek. Hold on, Shadow, let's not jump to conclusions. I know the guy acts weird now and then, but Sonic was about to reason with Shadow when Amy cuts him off by screaming, Sonic. He hit me when I was just trying to help him and he's been giving me passive-aggressive comments since he came along. Well, that's not necessarily the case, Amy. Remember, he is from a different universe and is a god. Some words and mannerisms may have different meanings than they do for us, Tails countered logically, albeit with some uncertainty in his voice. HMPH. Yeah, well, I have a sneaking suspicion that he's not being entirely truthful with us, Shadow argued back, crossing his arms and looking away from most of the others. I'm not totally sold on him either, Shadow. But if we act too soon we could lose track of the kid, so for now simmer down and we'll keep tabs on Zamasu. If he continues to act up then we'll figure out what his real deal is, Rouge reasoned with Shadow. Yeah, Shadow, chill out, we got this. Sonic backed up Rouge with a thumbs up. The ultimate life form just HMPHED at both, which made them and the rest turn away to find each his own way to pass the time. He then looked towards Amy. Walked close to her, uncrossing his arms and putting one on her shoulder. Are you okay? He didn't hurt you too much, did he? Shadow questioned Amy, concerned in an more outwardly emotional tone than what was normal for him, which Amy took note of. Oh yeah, I'm doing okay now, thank you. Amy thanked the ultimate life form, touched by his worry for her health, removing her hand to show that Zamasu hadn't done any significant damage, though she'd definitely have a bruise on her cheek by the next day. Sure thing, just be careful around Zamasu from now on, K. Shadow awkwardly responded, warned her. Well yada, like I'm gonna try and help a creep like that after giving me this shiner. Amy made light of Shadow's warning in a teasing way. I didn't think so. Just I know it's kinda what you do and I didn't want you getting hurt again. Shadow explained himself, his cheeks turning red as he blushed from embarrassment at his out-of-character stuttering sp. Each and sappier than normal-sounding words. Amy blushed too as she too felt the awkwardness of Shadow's unusual behavior. She also inwardly remarked that while Sonic's usual aloofness to her and her feelings did still sting, it strangely didn't get under her skin as much as it usually did. Was she? No, that's ridiculous. The end.